Chapter 2182. In the main hall of Miaoyan Mountain, Wind Massacre Demon Emperor, Red Rain Region Lord, and Xian Chong Region Lord stood side by side. When they saw the monstrous killing intent exuding from Lin Sun, they were shocked and could not believe that this was the power of a Ju Shi quasi-emperor. And seeing the changes in the killing intent and power around Lin Sun, Ba Qi could not help but flash a strange light in the depths of his eyes. He had to admit that this baby, who should have died back then, was indeed the most outstanding genius in the world today. There was probably no one who could be on par with him in the entire ancient road of the starry sky. This made Ba Qi more and more curious. How did Lin Sun, who had lost the spiritual vein, change his fate and achieve what he had today like nirvana? Boom! The world shook as Lin Sun stepped into the void. The boiling killing intent caused the surrounding heaven and earth to fall into chaos, and there was endless divine brilliance circulating around his body. Do you want to do it now? Don't you want to know what happened back then? Ba Qi suddenly asked. I'll kill you and extract your memories. I'll get the answer myself. Lin Sun took a deep breath and said coldly, Yezi. In the bronze sword box, Yezi turned into a ray of bright light and appeared. Yezi could clearly feel that Lin Sun had become a different person this time, showing a kind of extreme hatred and killing intent. This had never happened before. Yezi did not ask or tell Lin Sun that the man standing in the void had unfathomable cultivation and was suspected to be at the 7th level of the Emperor realm. Or rather, Yezi had long realized that even if he told the cruel truth to Lin Sun, the other party would not retreat. Therefore, Yezi did not say a word and attacked immediately. Swish! A ray of sword chi soared into the sky, shining like a divine rainbow, shaking the stars. The incomparably abundant sword intent seemed to be able to destroy this world. This was Yezi's full strength. With this sword, he had easily suppressed Ling Feng, Mingyu, Song Lang, and Fei Ya. This is the sword spirit that once aroused the greed of the ice-devouring sword emperor? It really is extraordinary. Ba Qi's scarlet pupils were flowing with a strange light, and his voice was low. As he spoke, a scarlet law of emperor emerged in front of him and evolved into a huge, ferocious snake head. It soared into the sky and opened its mouth to devour. Rumble! The peerlessly ferocious and fierce strand of sword chi was like a piece of paper that was devoured by the enormous snake head and vanished completely. Ba Qi seemed as if he'd done something that couldn't be any more casual, and he said, Unfortunately, it's still insufficient to fight me. Ye's pupils contracted. Lin Sun clenched his fists quietly, hatred surging in his black eyes. Anger raged in his body like burning, but it did not destroy his reason. This strike alone made him realize how childish and laughable his previous understanding of Ba Qi was. How could a quasi-emperor compare to him? On Subtle Cloud Mountain, Windfall Devil Emperor and the others felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Earlier, when he attacked, it caused them to break out in cold sweat because the might of that sword chi caused their hairs to stand on end, and they felt extremely threatened. Fortunately, in front of great Emperor Baki, this sword could not withstand a single blow. I'll give you a chance to use all your life-saving means. Otherwise, if you wait for me to attack, I'm afraid you won't have a chance to use them again. Ba Qi's voice resounded between heaven and earth. He seemed extremely conceited, and his expression had been cold and indifferent, like a superior god. Roar! In front of him, the huge snake head roared, and the nearby mountains and rivers exploded and collapsed. The terrifying power of the law of Emperor Realm turned into a boundless blood-red torrent that swept towards Lin Sun. He attacked, slashing out thousands of strands of sword chi, densely tearing the void and sweeping across. Rumble! The sky and earth collapsed, and the sun and moon lost their light. The boundless sword chi collided with the blood-red torrent, and the resulting power was so terrible that it seemed to destroy the whole world. When the smoke and dust dispersed, Ye's figure became dim. The gap was too big. If he was at his peak, he would not be afraid of a person who was suspected to be at the 7th level of the Emperor realm. Unfortunately, he could only kill an opponent at the 4th level of the Emperor realm at most. But Yi didn't show any fear. His figure appeared in the air. Although he was only 3 inches tall, he had the power to defend against 10,000 enemies. This time, Lin Sun was not afraid of death, and he would fight to the end. Why should he be afraid? The sword spirit was never afraid of death. The sword spirit can't hold on any longer. Since you can escape from the primordial world to the dark world, you can't only have these life-saving means, right? Ba Qi spoke again. He had been standing on the top of Miaoyan Mountain, as if he was unshakable under the sky. This was the power of the Hand of Darkness. In the dark world, even those in the Emperor realm would turn pale when they talked about it. So much nonsense only proves that you have concerns and scruples in your heart. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold, and his killing intent surged like a tide. Otherwise, why don't you dare to attack with all your strength? Ba Qi was silent for a moment, and then he nodded and said, "That's right. No matter if it's you or the sword spirit, both of you are nothing to me. The only thing I'm afraid of is none other than the life-saving means you possess. It's better to be safe than sorry. I don't want to fail miserably." Immediately, he changed the subject, and his eyes were frightening. "However, no matter what happens, you can't change your fate today." His words were indifferent and unquestionable. He had absolute and supreme power and was as proud as a god. But from the beginning to the end, he was neither arrogant nor careless. He was calm and cold. The more he was like this, the more chilling and desperate it was. Seeing such a scene, Windslaughter Sword Emperor and others felt a burst of fear and depression. They couldn't imagine what a terrible and powerless thing it would be to be the enemy of Emperor Ba Qi. Lin Sun didn't seem to be affected at all. Facing Ba Qi's confident attitude, he spat out only one word, "Kill!" Then Yi moved again. His figure was bright as if it was burning, and he rushed to Ba Qi. Ba Qi frowned. For him, this kind of attack was like an ant trying to shake a tree. He didn't believe that Lin Sun didn't know this. But both Lin Sun and the sword spirit seemed to be so resolute that they would rather be smashed to pieces than fight with their lives on the line. Were they really courting death? Ba Qi didn't believe it. Therefore, in the face of Yi, Ba Qi used his real strength. He stretched out a hand from the void and gently clenched it. Boom! The void suddenly collapsed and broke. The scarlet law of Emperor, like thick divine chains, intertwined and turned into a bloody prison. The prison reflected horrible visions such as demons dancing wildly, gods falling, and the sky falling and the earth sinking. The forbidden blood prison. It was a supreme secret method that operated the law of space and one's own cultivation to the extreme. However, a strange scene appeared. Before the forbidden blood prison showed its power, it suddenly stagnated for a moment. In fact, at this moment, the whole world seemed to be still, and the supreme power of time seemed to be interfered with for a moment. Even though Ba Qi had made sufficient preparations and noticed that something was off, he was still unable to react in time to the sudden change that occurred in that instant. At this moment, a suet jade bottle appeared in Ye's hand, and a ray of sword qi came out of the crystal-clear mouth of the bottle. The Great Way bottle! And the sword that came out of the bottle was Ye's all-out attack. In a flash. It was extremely short. By the time Ba Qi reacted, he saw that the sword qi had already arrived before him. It was so close that it was already too late for him to dodge. The sword qi roared at an incredible speed. The endless fierce sharpness tore apart Ba Qi's defense, broke his armor and split his chest. Puff! Blood splashed. Like a supreme god, Emperor Ba Qi groaned in pain at this moment. His face suddenly changed, and anger flashed in his scarlet and indifferent eyes. That strike had almost split open his stomach. Although he resisted it in the end, his skin and flesh were torn, his bones were exposed, and his blood kept pouring out. The fierce sword chi invaded his body and kept raging, causing him internal injuries. It was incredible. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Ba Chi couldn't help but suspect that if he hadn't been strong enough, this sword would have killed him. The more he thought about it, the more afraid he was and the angrier he was. He had been vigilant enough and calculated everything, but he still suffered a big loss in a flash. Boom! At this moment, the forbidden blood prison that he had used earlier finally dissipated along with his injuries. One could imagine how fast the battle that had occurred in that instant was. In the distance, Lin Sun's pupils shrank and his face changed slightly. This was the first time that he failed to kill his opponent after casting the forbidden death since he started his cultivation, and he even used the power of the infinite bottle and yi. All of this seemed to be silently proving how terrifying an Emperor Realm existence like Ba Chi was, and he wasn't someone an ordinary Emperor Realm figure could compare to. Demon Monarch Windslayer and the others were dumbfounded. The sudden attack was so unbelievable that they couldn't believe their eyes. They couldn't imagine how someone as powerful as Great Emperor Baki could suddenly suffer such a heavy injury. This strange scene also made their hair stand on end. If they were in Ba Chi's position, they would have died in a flash, wouldn't they? Swish! Seeing that his sword did not kill Quasi-Emperor Ba Chi, Yi rushed forward without hesitation and launched another attack, intending to kill him in one go. "Get out of my way!" Ba Chi bellowed. The bloody aura around him roared and swept across the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Terrifying power spread out and instantly shook Yi back. Bang! Yi flew backward, his figure staggered and dimmed. Obviously, he couldn't hold on any longer. He panted and said to Lin Sun, "Lin Sun, this old thing is at the 8th level of Emperor Realm." The 8th level of Emperor Realm. Just this realm alone was enough to make anyone feel despair and collapse. The difference was more than thousands of miles. Lin Sun's black eyes flickered. Now that she was gone and Yi was injured, the forbidden death could only injure him but not kill him. This could be said to be the biggest crisis Lin Sun had encountered since he started cultivating. Chapter 2183. However, Lin Sun did not flinch. His black eyes were fixed on Ba Chi in the distance, and there was a crazy determination in his eyes. "Yi, go back to the sword sheath first," Lin Sun said softly. But Yi shook his head and refused. He was also very determined. Sword spirit, how could he flinch? Death was not something to be afraid of. Lin Sun was startled, and then he couldn't help laughing. "Fine, we brothers will fight to the death with this old beast today." Brothers? This title seemed to have an indescribable power in such a dangerous situation, and Yi couldn't help laughing. He smiled brightly. He was really happy. It turned out that Lin Sun regarded him as a brother. In the distance, looking at Lin Sun and Yi who were at the end of their rope, Ba Chi also laughed. His face was full of disdain, coldness, and killing intent. He had already recovered from the serious injuries he suffered before, but his internal injuries couldn't be healed in a short time. But it didn't matter. Even if he was seriously injured and on the verge of death, he had absolute confidence to kill these 2 ignorant ants. "Little fellow, back then, I took away your origin spirit vein and gave it to Yunqin Bai. Today, I will take away your soul and flesh and refine you into a puppet. You will live a life worse than death for all eternity." With a cold and hoarse voice, Ba Chi attacked without hesitation. A blood-red light wheel appeared behind him, reflecting the figure of a huge, fierce beast. 8 huge heads were raised and roared, shattering the void. The 8 tails shook and stirred up the world. Mystic Cloud Mountain, which was covered in layers of restrictive formations, directly turned into dust that filled the sky. The horrified wind slaughtered Demon Emperor and the others immediately dodged in a sorry state. Even so, they felt extremely terrified and almost suffocated. The furious Great Emperor Ba Chi was like a peerless evil god who walked out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, shrouding the world in great terror. Boom! Ba Chi waved his sleeve, and a snake tail as thick as a mountain swept out. It was like a divine whip in the hand of a deity, crushing the void and whipping the yin and yang. An 8th-level Emperor Realm cultivator's aura alone was enough to crush mountains and rivers. The attack from the snake's tail was even more terrifying. Lin Sun didn't dodge, because it was impossible. Yi did not dodge either. He was well aware that Lin Sun, who was only at the 3rd heaven of Quasi-Emperor Ju Shi, would not be able to block this attack. Even the pressure released by this attack could kill him. Therefore, he could not retreat. His bearing was calm and resolute. Incomparably crazy sword chi accumulated on his body, as if it was burning him. But what was even faster than Ye's attack was an extremely dazzling and dazzling divine arrow. It seemed as if it had penetrated through the ages, and it emitted an extremely ferocious aura. Even the heavens and earth darkened under this arrow. Yi was startled, and then his eyes lit up. It was that guy. Before he arrived at the world of darkness, this was the same arrow that pierced through the vast starry sky and killed a 4th-level Emperor Realm expert with ease. That scene was incomparably stunning. However, in comparison, the arrow that shot through the air was even more ferocious. At the same time, the heavens and earth froze for a moment. Time stopped, and all things returned to silence. The whipping snake tail seemed to be frozen in a painting. Only the arrow pierced through the picturesque world and whizzed away. Boom! In the distance, the body of great Emperor Baki, who had an immeasurable aura, exploded instantly. Blood rained down, and the heavens and earth were dyed red. An earth-shattering rumble shattered the world that seemed to have been frozen in time. It was also at this time that Demon Emperor Windslaughter and the others saw great Emperor Baki explode with a single arrow. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets, and they cried out involuntarily. How is this possible? Their minds were blank, and their minds were blank. Just a moment ago, great Emperor Baki's stomach had almost been ripped open and he had sustained serious injuries. This was something that Demon Emperor Windslaughter and the others found hard to understand. Now, great Emperor Baki had been killed by a single arrow in the blink of an eye. The bloody and unbelievable scene almost drove them crazy. Great Emperor Baki was an 8th-level Emperor Realm expert, the hand of darkness feared by countless beings. How powerful and terrifying was he? How could he just die like this? Ye's eyes drifted and looked at Wu Kei beside Lin Sun, who looked like a gray-haired teenager. He was standing in the void with the insignificant bow in his hand, and his aura was fierce and aggressive. However, Yi was keenly aware that Wu Kei had suffered a great loss from this arrow. His face was so pale that it was almost transparent. When Yi saw Lin Sun's appearance, he was even more surprised. At this moment, Lin Sun's black hair had already turned into the color of frost and snow. He seemed to have aged countless years all of a sudden. His aura was weak and his eyes were dim. Lin Sun, you. Ye's heart trembled. I'm all right, Lin Sun said in a hoarse voice. Using the forbidden passing twice in a row made his cultivation completely exhausted, and he suffered a certain degree of backfire. He's not dead yet. Suddenly Wu Kei's face turned pale. Lin Sun and Yi were stunned by his words. They looked up at the sky. In the distant sky, surging bloody mist silently suffused and roiled, and it was ceaselessly gathering and wriggling as if it possessed a life of its own. In the end, it turned into a huge and boundless beast. Its body was as big as a mountain, covered with scarlet and cold scales. It had 8 heads, and each head was as big as a house. Some were fierce, some were evil, and some were greedy, violent, furious, bloodthirsty, and insane, so on and so forth. On the other hand, 8 snake tails rose up behind its body, and they were like numerous thick divine whips that reached the heavens. As they danced about, the color of blood suffused the air and caused the surrounding space to collapse and sink. This was the body of great Emperor Baki. Boom, the world was turbulent, and the blood spread like a tide. Great Emperor Baki, who had turned into a beast body, roared under the sky. The land within a radius of 10,000 miles was in turmoil. The sky collapsed, and the boundless turbulence and killing intent made the sun and moon dim and the world turn upside down. That scene was really terrible. Demon Emperor Windslaughter and the others trembled. They were surprised and frightened. They were surprised that Great Emperor Baki was not dead, and they were frightened because the aura that Great Emperor Baki exuded made them shiver in fear. Lin Sun, Yi, and Wu Kei looked solemn and their hearts sank. Even they could not imagine how Great Emperor Baki could be so terrifying. Most importantly, the three of them were on the verge of death. Little bastard, what other trump cards do you have? Why don't you show them all? Great Emperor Baki's 8 heads in the distance spoke at the same time. His voice shook the universe and revealed boundless cold, killing intent. He was indeed completely furious. He could not believe that he had been seriously injured twice in a row with his cultivation at the 8th level of the Emperor realm. It was a great humiliation to him. If I had the strength of the past, how could I be looked down upon by such an ugly insect? Wu Kei sighed. You looked calm. If I had the strength of the past, why would I need you to deal with such an insect? It's useless to talk about this now. Wu Kei shrugged and said, Then we can only fight to the death. Do you want to join hands with me and fight for a way out for the little master? Yi said without hesitation, Although I don't like your arrogance, I can agree to your request this time. Wu Kei could not help but grin. But at this moment Lin Sun said, If you want to fight to the death, you should do it together. Later, you will fight together, and I will fight for a moment for you. His words were calm, but his black eyes flashed with crazy and determined hatred. This time, he would fight to the death even if he had to fight with all his strength. Wu Kei and Ye's faces suddenly changed. Lin Sun's hair was as white as snow, and his aura was weak. If he fought with all his strength, his foundation of Tao would suffer irreparable damage. A moment of opportunity? In the distance, Great Emperor Baki shook his 8 huge heads, and his aura was terrifying. Is this the talent of your new life? He was undoubtedly the one who knew Lin Sun's talent best. The horror of the great abyss-devouring sky was vividly reflected in Yun Qin Bai. Hearing Lin Sun's words, Great Emperor Baki vaguely guessed something, but he was not sure. Because the truth was related to the mystery of time, which was so incredible that he did not believe that such power would appear in a quasi-emperor. However, he already had a plan. After suppressing Lin Sun, he would cut open Lin Sun's body to see what kind of amazing secret was hidden in Lin Sun's new talent. Let's do it. Ignoring Great Emperor Baki, Lin Sun took a deep breath and made an unquestionable decision. Wu Kei and Yi looked at each other and no longer tried to persuade him. Boom! In the distance, Great Emperor Baki took action in advance. His huge body pressed the void, and he pounced on Lin Sun at an incredible speed. You can't do it more than 3 times. Do you really think you can beat me with the same trick? Go to hell. This time, Great Emperor Baki had obviously learned his lesson. When he took action, he exhausted all his means and released thousands of Taoism in an instant. Every single Tao art was boundlessly ferocious and possessed different might, and they were dense like a violent storm that covered the heavens and the earth as they swept out. The whole world was shrouded by them. In this way, even if he was passive for a moment, it was enough to make him invincible. At the same time, Lin Sun, Yi, and Wu Kei were about to take action. But at this moment, an extremely indifferent voice sounded. It's just a reptile. Why do you need to risk your life? When the voice sounded, it was as sharp as a blade stabbing into their hearts. Lin Sun, Wu Kei, and Yi all stiffened. In Lin Sun's mind, a figure emerged uncontrollably. In the suffocating boundless darkness, a figure was sitting, with thumb-thick chains wrapped around his throat, feet, and back. Obscure fluctuations of order were flowing out. When he opened his eyes, they were like a pair of burning suns, tearing the boundless darkness apart. They were like extremely sharp swords that could tear the 9th heaven apart. It was him. The spirit of the broken blade. Third update. Chapter 2184. Clang. As soon as the figure of the spirit of the broken blade flashed in Lin Sun's mind, the broken blade swept out from his body with a clear sound. That clear cry traversed the heavens and the earth, causing the surroundings to tremble. Demon Emperor Windkilling, Region Lord Hongyu, and Region Lord Xian Chong trembled all over, with blood dripping from their 7 apertures. Their chi almost collapsed because of the terrible impact. They were horrified and scared out of their wits. How could the power of a clear sound be so horrible? As the broken blade swept out, it was like a galaxy sweeping out from the earth, shining above the sky. Unparalleled murderous spirit spread like a landslide and a tsunami. Boom! The thick blood color that enveloped the world directly collapsed and disappeared like a whirlwind. Only the incomparably bright sharpness turned into the most dazzling light between heaven and earth. Under the attack of the broken blade, the thousands of Taoism skills displayed by Great Emperor Baki were crushed as if they were swept by a storm, rumbling and exploding, and a rain of light swirled in the air. It should be noted that this was the power of the 8th level of the Emperor realm. Each kind of Taoism skill was branded with the supreme secret, which had the power to conquer the world and cleanse the world. But at this moment, it was destroyed in a twinkling. Great Emperor Baki, who thought that he had won the battle, had no time to dodge. His head, which was as large as a house, was chopped off. Clatter blood splashed like a torrent, scarlet and hot. Great Emperor Baki was in great pain, and the other 7 heads let out heart-wrenching roars. The origin of the Great Way was stored in these 8 heads. Now that one of them was chopped off, it was equivalent to cutting off a part of his cultivation. Howl! He roared, and his huge body emitted a violent and ferocious bloody light. What treasure is this? How can it be so terrible? His voice was full of fear. When he was injured by Ye's sword and pierced by Wu Kei's arrow, he was not as flustered as he was now, nor was he as calm and composed as before. Lin Sun, Wu Kei, and Yi looked at each other with indescribable shock in their hearts. Earlier, they'd already made up their minds to put their lives on the line. But the appearance of the broken blade swept away their declining momentum. It was like a hurricane that swept through the heavens and the earth, and it swept away everything in its path. This was undoubtedly incredible. So that guy is actually so powerful, Wu Kei muttered. He often competed with Duanren to refine the Emperor weapon's essence, so of course he knew about the existence of the Broken Blade Spirit. However, he did not expect the Broken Blade Spirit to be this powerful. Lin Sun, why didn't you mention him before, or even ask him for help just now? Yezi couldn't help asking. Lin Sun couldn't help smiling wryly. The Broken Blade Spirit could be said to be one of the most mysterious existences in the world. Ever since he was young, the Broken Blade Spirit had followed him into battle. But it was not until he was in the Hongmeng world that he knew there was such a terrifying existence lurking in the Broken Blade. To this day, Lin Sun still remembered the words of the extremely indifferent and calm figure sitting in the darkness. You want to completely refine my power? With your current strength, you're far from being able to do it. Try again in the future. There was a tinge of disappointment in his voice. At that time, Lin Sun almost suffocated at the sight of such a scene and was soaked in cold sweat. However, the Broken Blade Spirit hadn't shown up in the past few years, so Lin Sun didn't expect it to help him at all. Therefore, Lin Sun did not expect the Broken Blade Spirit to make a move at this moment. Swoosh! The Broken Blade Spirit did not speak, or rather, he did not want to talk to a bug. Only the Broken Blade Spirit flickered in the void, as if it was controlled by an invisible hand. It set off a monstrous sharpness, as if it was about to split heaven and earth and divide the pure from the turbid. It was extremely fierce and domineering. Great Emperor Baki tried his best to dodge and resist, but with a flash of the Broken Blade Spirit, another head was chopped off. The head, which was as big as a house, fell to the ground and created a huge pit. Great Emperor Baki let out a shrill cry of pain. Blood spurted from his body, making him look hideous. He was completely terrified. With his combat strength, he would even dare to fight a 9th-level Emperor Realm cultivator. But under the attack of the Broken Blade Spirit, he did not even have the strength to struggle. Demon Emperor Windkill and the others were dumbfounded. It was just a Broken Blade Spirit, but it had the power to crush Great Emperor Baki. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have believed it to be true. The appearance of Yezi and Wu Kei was already unbelievable, but in comparison, the Broken Blade Spirit was obviously more terrifying. Yezi and Wu Kei were also stunned. They were very docile in front of Lin Sun, but they were extremely arrogant when facing enemies. Wu Kei was fierce, arrogant, and unreasonable, while Yezi was fierce, and proud. But at this moment, witnessing the power of the Broken Blade Spirit made them feel a little uncomfortable. It felt as if the limelight had been stolen by someone else. Boom! Terrifying blood light circulated, and the void shook. Completely terrified, Baki chose to escape. He did not dare to hesitate at all, and almost desperately tried to teleport through the void. The Broken Blade Spirit flashed, and endless silver divine radiance flowed like stars, covering the heaven and earth in all directions. Then, Great Emperor Baki's huge body seemed to have hit a natural moat. With a bang, he fell from the teleportation, and the void there exploded and collapsed. It was also at this moment that the Broken Blade Spirit's voice sounded in the battlefield for the first time. It took me a long time to awaken and recover some of my vitality, but I have to waste it on a little bug like you. If I let you escape, who will compensate me? His voice was sharp and indifferent, like a sharp blade that pierced through the sky, and it carried a hint of dissatisfaction. Puff! The Broken Blade Spirit flashed, and Great Emperor Baki's third head was chopped off. The pain made his huge body roll in the air, and his 8 mountain-like tails twitched. So, he also knows how to complain? Wu Kei was stunned. Yi said seriously, "It seems that he is very unhappy with this attack, and he is venting his anger on this bug. Who are you? How dare you choose to go against the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect?" Great Emperor Baki roared in anger and fear. Threaten? Heh! How many years has it been since I was threatened by a little bug born in the source of turbidity? The Broken Blade Spirit seemed to be even more unhappy. Whoosh! The Broken Blade Spirit flashed, and in a flash, it chopped off Great Emperor Baki's head one after another, and blood poured down like a torrential rain. The world was filled with Great Emperor Baki's painful screams, and it was so shrill that it was horrifying. Lin Sun, Yi, and Wu Kei could not help but gasp. The scene of an 8th-level emperor being trampled and suppressed by the Broken Blade Spirit was too shocking. As for Wind Massacre Demon Emperor and the others, they had long lost their wits, and their minds were blank. The scene in front of them had completely overturned their imagination and understanding. "Senior, please spare my life. I am willing to do everything I can to make it up to you." Great Emperor Baki could not take it anymore, and he spoke in a hoarse voice. Even with his status and power, it had been many years since he was in such a miserable state, and he had never lowered his head or begged for mercy. But now, he could no longer care about his dignity. "Make it up to you? Do you think you are worthy?" The Broken Blade Spirit was extremely overbearing, and his tone was filled with disdain. Even compensation depends on whether the other party is worthy or not. He is much more arrogant than you, Yi said as he glanced at Wu Quebec. Wu Kei's lips twitched. Seeing that Great Emperor Baki was only left with his head, Lin Sun could not help but say, "Senior, please spare his life." Baki was the culprit behind the Lin family's murder case, and he knew a lot of the truth. Lin Sun really wanted to know whether his parents were still alive or not. The Broken Blade Spirit buzzed and stopped in the void. Then, the Broken Blade Spirit's voice sounded. "You didn't ask me to help before, but now you're begging me to stop?" His voice was still indifferent, and there was a hint of grumbling in it, as if he was venting his dissatisfaction. Wu Kei laughed. "Ha, so it's because little master didn't ask him to help, and he took the initiative to attack. How embarrassing." Yi thought for a moment and said seriously, "This only proves that this guy is very arrogant and doesn't know how to be grateful." Swoosh! The broken blade spirit's terrifying sharpness burst out, and it locked onto Yi from afar. "You said that I don't know how to be grateful?" Yi did not give in. "All these years, how many sovereign weapons has Lin Sun taken to help you recover? But he has never asked you for anything." The sharpness on the broken blade spirit gradually faded. After a moment of silence, the broken blade spirit said, "You're right. In the end, I owe him." His voice was low, and there was a hint of imperceptible guilt. Boom! The next moment, great Emperor Baki was suppressed by a terrible divine light. His huge body kept shrinking, and finally returned to his original human form. However, his face was extremely pale, and he was bleeding all over as if he was imprisoned. His breath was extremely weak. Witnessing this scene, Wind Slaughter Demon Emperor, Red Rain Region Lord, and Xian Chong Region Lord felt dizzy, as if the sky had collapsed. Great Emperor Baki, the Hand of Darkness, was a terrifying existence that had shocked the dark world for countless years. But now, he was completely suppressed. Run! The same thought emerged in the hearts of Wind Slaughter Demon Emperor and the others at the same time. However, before they could act, they only saw a sharp flash in front of them, and then they completely lost consciousness. In the eyes of Lin Sun and the others, Wind Slaughter Demon Emperor and the others in the far distance were killed silently, and their bodies were torn apart. There was no resistance, no scream, and they didn't even have time to react. Lin Sun couldn't help looking at the broken blade, and heard the voice of the spirit of the broken blade. "From today on, give me at most 100 years to recover. By then, I will help you kill the enemy of Tao." As soon as the voice fell, the broken blade swept into Lin Sun's body with a clang, and then fell silent. "Did I blame him wrongly?" Yi said in a daze, a little embarrassed. "You're right, and he did nothing wrong," Wu Kei explained with a smile. Yi looked at Lin Sun, who nodded. "Wu Kei is right." Only then did Yezi let out a sigh of relief. The world was silent, and the smell of blood was rolling between heaven and earth. Looking at great Emperor Baki, who was imprisoned in a coma in the distance, Lin Sun walked over. P.S. The 4th chapter is here. He had intended to continue writing, but he was informed to go out at 6:00 tomorrow morning, so he didn't dare to stay up late. In any case, he had posted 1 5th chapter and 2 4th chapters in the last 3 days of the month. He didn't ask for praise, so please don't criticize him. He wasn't afraid to tell you that he had 2 business trips next month, but they were both rejected by Goldfish. The purpose was very simple. Goldfish just wanted more time to concentrate on writing. Don't worry, after the National Day holiday, Goldfish will prepare for another breakthrough. In addition, on the 1st of tomorrow, he asked for a guaranteed monthly ticket for tomorrow. Chapter 2185. Lin Sun looked very calm. At the beginning of the battle, his face was full of extreme hatred and killing intent. But now it was all gone. There was only a kind of extreme calmness on his face. But the more it was so, the more uneasy it was. Great Emperor Baki, who was imprisoned and on the verge of death, felt a chill in his heart. He felt an indescribable sadness. As an 8th-layer martial emperor, he had slaughtered countless living beings over the years. His name was infamous and no one dared to slander him. But now, he was reduced to a miserable state where he could be slaughtered by others. He couldn't bear such a huge gap. Seeing Lin Sun approaching, great Emperor Baki struggled crazily, but everything seemed to be so powerless and futile. "I won't let you die like this." Lin Sun stepped forward and looked down at the miserable great Emperor Baki, who was bathed in blood. His words made great Emperor Baki's heart sink to the bottom. It was as if he could foresee the endless torture and humiliation that awaited him in the future. Lin soon suppressed great Emperor Baki with the Tower of Endless Way. Then he took a deep breath, looked at the world full of signs of destruction, and said, "Yezi, let's go." It was really time to go. After today, the Cold Sky territory was destined to become a place of trouble. On this day, Miaoyun Mountain was reduced to ruins. Demon Emperor Feng Tu, Region Lord Hongyu, and Region Lord Xian Chong all died. On this day, Great Emperor Baki, the 8th-level emperor known as the Hand of Darkness, was completely suppressed. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. On this day, the fact that Lin Sun, the successor of Mountain Heart, had turned into Tao Abyss of Sword Demon and all kinds of things he had done in the past 2 months under the guise of Region Lord Heikong was exposed. When the news came out, the Cold Sky territory was shocked. Countless overmatches were shocked. It turns out that Tao Abyss of Sword Demon is Lin Sun, the successor of Mountain Heart, who is wanted by the whole world. He is the one behind all the turmoil. Some people were shocked. How could Lin Sun be so powerful in 2 months when he wiped out the top 10 regions? Some people exclaimed, "Great Emperor Bachi, the Hand of Darkness, was a murderous and ferocious 8th-level martial emperor, but he was suppressed." Some people found it hard to believe. I'm sure that Lin Sun must be protected by a terrifying master. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to do this with his strength. Someone spoke with certainty. He's doomed. Whether it's the godly illuminating ancient sect or the other forces in the dark world, they will definitely start a massacre against him. Soon, the entire world of darkness was in an uproar. All 33 realms were in an uproar. The name of Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Innerheart, was once again mentioned by countless people. The reason was simple. Even someone as powerful as Great Emperor Baki had suffered. This was undoubtedly too disappointing. In the dark world, Great Emperor Baki was like an evil god whose hands were stained with blood. Every time he appeared, there would be a storm of blood. He was so powerful that even emperors were afraid of him. However, such a terrifying existence was suppressed by Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Fangsuan, who was only at the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. How could people not be shocked? Just what kind of terrifying trump card does this kid possess? No wonder a supreme existence like Heavenly Emperor Shi Tiandi would issue an order to capture him. This kid is truly too heaven-defying. Great Emperor Baki is in trouble, and the domain of Cold Sky is in chaos. The godly illuminating ancient sect should be the most furious, right? In the godly illuminating ancient sect, a wisp of gloominess appeared on Sect Master Yu Kuan-Zi's face in the sacred place that was like an immortal paradise. The domain of Cold Sky was a territory controlled by the godly illuminating ancient sect. But now, with the death of 10 territory lords, including Demon Emperor Feng Tu, it had fallen into chaos. Great Emperor Baki was a terrifying existence in the godly illuminating ancient sect. But now, he was also in trouble under the continuous heavy blows. The godly illuminating ancient sect was also in turmoil and furious. Even martial Uncle Baki is dead. Yu Kuan-Zi's expression was gloomy. Headmaster, if we don't take revenge, how can we face the godly illuminating ancient sect? How can we establish ourselves in the dark world in the future? I'm afraid we'll become a laughing stock. Someone said coldly. In the Taoist field, a group of big shots of the godly illuminating ancient sect sat with cold and angry expressions. When a tree falls, the monkeys scatter. In this dark world, I don't know how many people are waiting to see our godly illuminating ancient sect become a laughing stock. Headmaster, let alone others, Lin Sun is a wanted target of Shi Tiandi. Based on this, we can't let him live. Voices sounded one after another, all full of murderous intent. Yu Kuan-Zi frowned and said in a low voice, "The power in his hands is enough to kill martial Uncle Baki, who is in the 8th level of the Emperor realm. Do you think ordinary people can defeat him? His words made everyone speechless, and their faces darkened. This was indeed depressing. Lin Sun was no longer the Lin Sun of the past, and he was no longer someone who could be bullied at will. Now, he didn't even put ordinary Emperor Realm cultivators in his eyes. Coupled with the death of great Emperor Baki, it was too disappointing. Under such circumstances, who could possibly deal with him? Yu Kuan-zi said in a deep voice. After that game of chess ended, 4 of our divine illuminating ancient sects, 7 ancestral monarchs left for the other side of the galaxy. Now there are only 3 ancestral monarchs here. Do you want me to ask the ancestral monarchs for help? The emperor ancestors were like a stabilizing force to any ancient orthodoxy. They would not be dispatched unless it was a matter of life and death for the sect. If they dispatched such a terrifying and supreme existence just to deal with Lin Sun, the meaning would be completely different. Headmaster, do we have no choice but to swallow this humiliation? Someone's face was as gloomy as water. The little ants that they had looked down upon in the past were suddenly riding on their heads on this day. This feeling was simply enough to drive them crazy. Don't worry, the Hidden Land Realm is more eager to kill this kid than we are. Yu Kuan-zi's eyes flickered. Of course, we can't be indifferent. As he spoke, he gave an order. Someone, go and ask Martial Uncle Tian Tsong. Tian Tsong Sword Emperor. All the bigwigs present were stunned, and an imposing figure appeared in their minds involuntarily. He once sneaked into the starry sky, ancient road, and killed 39 peerless enemies with his sword. He was regarded as the adjudicator of the Emperor realm, and countless souls were killed by the sinful sword. If the ferocity of great Emperor Baki was enough to make all living beings tremble, then the name of Tian Tsong Sword Emperor was enough to make all the emperors tremble. In the Dark World, Tiandu Buddhist Emperor of the Hidden Land Realm, Tian Tsong Sword Emperor of the Godly Illuminating Ancient Sect, and Heavenly Destruction Martial Emperor of the Bronze Sparrow Tower were known as the 3 Masters of Assassination. In short, in the assassination of emperors, no one could compare with these 3. Immediately, everyone became excited. If Tian Tsong Sword Emperor took action, could Lin Sun escape the fate of being killed? Silently, a figure appeared in the Taoist field. He was dressed in plain clothes, with long hair hanging down and bare feet walking in the air. He was clearly standing there, but no one present seemed to notice him at all. When he spoke, the bodies of everyone shivered, and they were jolted back to their senses. Give me Baki's soul lamp. The figure's voice sounded in different places. It was faint, calm, and indifferent, but it made people feel cold. Taking a deep breath, Yu Kuan-zi rose to his feet and passed over a bronze lamp with an incomparably dim light. He said, Martial Uncle Baki's life is hanging by a thread, but he hasn't died yet. Whether he can be saved depends on Martial Uncle Tian Kong. After receiving the life lamp that belonged to great Emperor Baki, the figure disappeared without a trace. He did not make a single sound. On this day, Tian Tsong Sword Emperor, known as the adjudicator of the Emperor realm and one of the 3 Masters of Assassination, quietly left the Godly Illuminating Ancient Sect. Cold Sky Territory. In the governor's mansion of Silver City, Ji Ling sat there alone in a trance. So, Senior Daoyuan is Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Mind and Heart. He was so excited that he couldn't calm down. Now, the Cold Sky Territory had been in an uproar. People were talking about Lin Sun's deeds everywhere, which made Ji Ling both excited and indescribable. He finally understood what was going on. Only the successor of Mount Mind and Heart could have such incredible and heaven-defying means. Senior, don't worry. The Cold Sky Territory will be under my control sooner or later. At that time, as long as you give the order, I will follow you into battle. Ji Ling made up his mind. He didn't know where Lin Sun went, but he knew that the power he controlled was given by Lin Sun. In the Dark World, loyalty was the least valuable thing, but it was also the most valuable thing. Jiling would prove to Lin Sun that he was the most valuable one. Outside the governor's mansion, a figure stood there silently. He was dressed in plain clothes and his long hair was loose. He was barefooted and there was no fluctuation of aura around him. There were many people around him, but no one noticed his existence. In the end, he shook his head and took a step forward, disappearing on the spot and arriving outside Silver City. He was one of the 3 masters of assassination in the Dark World and was known as the adjudicator of the Emperor Realm. For countless years, his sword of sin had only killed those in the Emperor Realm. Jiling was just a small character and he didn't take him seriously. He didn't come to Silver City to find Jiling. I will find you. Outside the city, Heaven Cluster Sword Emperor looked at the distant sky and his mind was calm. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly frowned and looked not far away. A man who looked unkempt walked over drunkenly with a wine gourd in his hand. His beard and hair were messy, his eyes were blurry, his nose was red, and his steps were weak. He looked like an ordinary drunkard. But when he saw the drunken man, Heaven Cluster Sword Emperor's pupils shrank and he said, "You are also looking for Lin Sun?" The man burped and his eyes were hazy. He mumbled, "Idiot, can't you tell that I am looking for you?" Heaven Cluster Sword Emperor asked, "What is it?" The man raised his wine gourd and drank wildly. After a while, he smacked his lips and sighed, "You are really an idiot. When we meet, of course we will fight. I wish everyone a happy National Day. During the 7 days of holiday, Goldfish will ensure that there will be updates as usual. After the holiday, we will prepare for the outbreak." Chapter 2186. Fight? The Heaven Destruction Sword Emperor frowned. "Your polearm should know that if we fight, we won't be able to decide the victor within 10 days or half a month." The polearm. The drunken man in front of him was none other than the Heavenly Destruction Martial Emperor of the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, one of the 3 peerless assassins. 10 days or half a month isn't enough. Martial Emperor Polearm shook his head like a rattledrum. "At least a year?" The Heaven Destruction Sword Emperor was silent for a moment. "What is the Bronze Sparrow Tower trying to do?" Martial Emperor Polearm reeked of alcohol as he mumbled, "Fight." The Heaven Destruction Sword Emperor said coldly, "What if I don't agree?" Whoosh. His figure vanished into thin air as soon as he finished speaking. "Run? Where can I run to now that I've set my sights on you?" As he muttered drunkenly, the dispirited man kicked out with his foot. The void rumbled and a tunnel was torn open. His figure swayed as he walked in, disappearing without a trace. As soon as the 2 of them left, a shadow appeared in the sky, and it swiftly transformed into a black-clothed monk with an ordinary appearance. Looking in the direction where the Heaven Destruction Sword Emperor and Martial Emperor Polearm had disappeared, the monk smiled. "Fight to your heart's content. Leave Lin Sun to me." Just as he turned to leave, a big yellow dog walked over slowly from afar. It was an extremely ordinary-looking dog. The only difference was that the dog's fur was smooth and shiny, and its eyes were extremely bright. Even the way he walked was very arrogant, very calm, and very calm. If that was all, it would just be a dog raised by a rich family. But the black-robed monk froze the moment he saw the big yellow dog. His expression changed, and he turned to flee without hesitation. Undisguised disdain flashed in the big yellow dog's eyes. That was probably what a dog would look like. A whoa! It let out a low growl and gave chase. Even as it gave chase, its head was raised proudly. Its eyes were full of arrogance, as if it was looking down on the world and all life. Most inconceivable of it all was that it had caught up to the black-clothed monk in merely an instant, and then it maintained the same speed as the black-clothed monk. The black-robed monk's expression changed again, and he had no choice but to stop. The big yellow dog opened its mouth and spoke in a disdainful tone, "Keep running, why did you stop? Isn't Celestial Metropolis Buddhist Emperor, one of the 3 masters of assassination, most proficient in the art of 10,000 li in a flash, coming and leaving without a trace? The black-robed monk was none other than the celestial metropolis Buddhist emperor, a horrifying existence who walked in the darkness. Wherever he passed by, death followed. However, if someone were to see this scene, they would definitely go mad. Who would dare to believe that the heaven capital Buddhist Tharch would be chased by a dog? And he actually caught up? Who had ever seen a dog dare to mock the Buddha Emperor of Heaven Capital in such a disdainful manner? This was simply subverting one's worldview. However, to the current Buddhist emperor, the dog before him was even more terrifying than the most ferocious beasts of the ancient times. He could not help but show fear when he faced it. "Why are you chasing after me so relentlessly?" The Buddha Emperor of Heaven Capital Buddhist Emperor's voice was low, and he looked vigilant. Others might not know, but for an existence like him who had lived in the dark world for countless years, how could he not know how terrifying this big yellow dog was? "What do you think?" The big yellow dog tilted his head, and his face was full of mockery. "For that Lin Sun?" The Buddha Emperor of Heaven Capital Buddhist Emperor frowned. "Yes," the big yellow dog said. "How about it, do you want to stop now? Isn't it better to rely on our own means?" The Buddha Emperor of Heaven Capital Buddhist Emperor's frown deepened. The big yellow dog appeared to be extremely arrogant, and spat out two words one by one, "No." The Buddha Emperor of Heaven Capital Buddhist Emperor said, "I heard that your master has offended Emperor Shirtian. Even an arrogant person like him has to go into hiding. Aren't you afraid?" "How?" The big yellow dog let out a roar, and pounced at the Buddha Emperor of Heaven Capital Buddhist Emperor. Chi La. A corner of his clothes was torn. Even with Buddha Sovereign Tiandu's heaven-defying means, he was almost bitten. One could imagine how ferocious Big Yellow was. Without hesitation or counterattack, the Buddha Emperor of Heaven Capital Buddhist Emperor fled again. He knew very well that once he was entangled with this dog, it would be difficult for him to get away. Therefore, when he was escaping this time, Buddha Tharch Tian-du used all his strength. "Bald donkey, you can't escape." Big Yellow barked and chased after them with all four of his legs. Soon, the man and the dog disappeared from the cold sky domain. In a secret realm, the mountains, rivers, and everything were covered with a chaotic and obscure aura, which made the heaven and earth present an ancient and primitive charm. In the center of this secret realm, there was a platform, on which two figures were sitting. A slender figure was sitting quietly. Strands of dreamlike power of law and order intertwined with each other, and a light rain was falling, which made her as mysterious as a fairy. This figure was she. The figure opposite her was also sitting quietly, but he looked like a supreme ruler of the starry sky. His lonely figure was like the backbone of heaven and earth. The two of them had been silent for a long time. Out of a kind of pride, or perhaps it was an invisible competition, neither of them was willing to be the first to speak. It had been 2 months since they entered this secret realm, but they had not spoken a word to each other. This was naturally very strange. But it could be seen that the two of them were very patient, as if this silence could last for countless years. Ding! A sound like the sound of jade pendants colliding broke the silence of the heaven and earth. The arrogant man frowned and looked at she, who was opposite him. He raised his hand and a messenger jade slip fell into his hand. After looking at the contents of the jade slip, the man looked at she again and finally spoke. His voice was like the sonorous voice of the great Tao, which went straight to the heart. "Only children will choose to remain silent to show their pride. I've saved you, so you should take the initiative to express your gratitude." She looked up at him, but did not speak. But the man seemed to have read the meaning of her gaze. It seemed to be saying, "You're the first to speak. That means you're inferior to me in terms of conceit and pride." This made the man raise his eyebrows involuntarily, feeling strange in his heart. For countless years, he had always been extremely conceited and arrogant. His arrogance was deep in his bones, and he was arrogant to the point that he considered everyone beneath him. He once said that the weight of the great Tao could not crush a person's pride. Even if the entire world was his enemy, his pride would not be affected. However, he did not feel that there was anything wrong with this. Or rather, he felt that this was normal. After all, he was such a person in the first place, a person who had pride throughout his life. Hence, he could not understand why she would use such a method to compete with him. Pride, was there a need to compare? So, he said very seriously, childish. She still did not say anything, only looking at him quietly. Interesting. The man smiled mysteriously and waved the jade slip in his hand. This contains information about the brat you care about the most. Aren't you curious? She thought for a while and finally said, "He is your junior brother. You should be the one who cares about him the most." Her voice was as cold as ice. However, when she spoke, the man could not help but smile again. No matter what, he is still the successor of Fengtsuan Mountain. Even if he has not obtained my approval, there's no harm in paying attention to his movements. As he spoke, he handed the jade slip to she. She hesitated for a while but still took it and flipped through it. It took 2 months for a single person to cause such a disturbance. I wonder when I'll really want to meet him. The man's voice was calm. She raised her head and looked at him. When you were a peak quasi-emperor back then, how would you have dealt with a level 8 martial emperor? The man replied without hesitation, I would not have given a level 8 martial emperor a chance to suppress me. What if I ran into him? The man appeared extremely conceited. His tone was calm. There is no what if, she said. Then I will tell you the answer. If you were him, with the arrogance you have shown, only death awaits you. Because you will not escape and will not ask for help. If you fight with your life on the line, it will be like throwing an egg against a rock. There is no other possibility than death. The man said indifferently, Everything you said is just an assumption. I don't mind telling you that from the day I started cultivating, I have never given my enemies a chance to kill me. And now you have seen for yourself that there are not many in this world who can kill me. She thought about it and said, You are more arrogant than I thought. The man corrected, I have pride in my heart and a lofty character, but I am not arrogant. The difference of one word is like the difference between heaven and earth. Oh, she replied and fell into silence. The man stood up and said, When the opportunity comes, I will let you leave, but not now. Also, that woman called Yan Xing used all her methods and luckily escaped with her life. If nothing goes wrong, she will definitely seek help from Shi Tiandi. At this point, the man revealed a secret. However, Shi Tiandi has already gone to the Endless Ruins. He will not be able to escape anytime soon. The Endless Ruins is not a place that anyone can enter and leave as they please. She glanced at him and said, You still haven't told me why you won't let me leave. The man said, If you stay by his side, you will only delay his opportunity to seek the Tao. Opportunity? Yes, an opportunity related to the immortal path of supremacy. With that, the man turned around and left. I know you are worried about him, but don't forget that I am his senior brother in name. A long time ago, I was actually waiting for him. Before he finished speaking, he had already disappeared from this secret realm. She sat alone on the Tao platform and fell into deep thought. Her graceful figure was dreamy and hazy. Several months ago, she fought with Yan Xing. She was heavily injured and defeated her opponent. However, just as she was about to kill her opponent, an accident occurred. The Forbidden Order power suddenly descended and put her in a desperate situation. Chapter 2187. After the man walked out of the secret realm, he took a light step forward. The next moment, he was already above the vast starry sky. He stood with his hands behind his back, quietly looking down at the huge dark world in the distance. A long, long time ago, he knew that the forbidden power of order from the Permitha realm could only cover the starry sky ancient path, and could not replace the original power of order that belonged to the starry sky ancient path. The primordial world was an unknown place that had not been explored to this day, and the original power of order existed. This was also why the chaotic treasures that were born there could resist and dissolve the forbidden power of order. He also knew that the two tribulations of oblivion that had been born in the past were due to the changes in the original order of the starry sky ancient path. And the third tribulations of oblivion that would appear in a year would be the final transformation of the original order of the starry sky ancient path. This transformation was unstoppable. Even the forbidden power of order controlled by Shi Tiandi could not interfere. The path of the immortal sovereign, nirvana of freedom. The tribulations of oblivion, a single lotus blooms. This was a Taoist hymn that had been passed down for a long time, and almost no one knew its origin. But he knew. This Taoist hymn was left behind by his master, the master of Fengtsuan Mountain, in the beginning of the primordial era. Until now, he still remembered very clearly that his master had paid an extremely heavy price to deduce the changes in the original order of order. Otherwise, with his master's cultivation, he would definitely not have left just like that. Thinking of this, a sense of loss welled up in the man's heart. After a long silence, he took a deep breath, and a hint of determination surged in his eyes. In these countless years, he had been guarding the dark world. Even when that game of chess broke out, he had never left. All for the sake of waiting for the single lotus blooming. This was his master's long-cherished wish. "My lord!" A deep voice that sounded like thunder suddenly rang out, and a burly man that was several feet tall appeared out of thin air. His entire body was surrounded by terrifying black lightning, and every breath he took was like the rumbling of wind and thunder. "Speak." The man's expression was indifferent, and he stood there casually, as if he was aloof from the world. "Things are progressing very smoothly. The polearm of divine destruction has stopped the heaven cluster sword emperor." The burly man said respectfully, "But there's some trouble over at Big Yellow's side." At the end, his expression was strange. The man seemed to have guessed something a long time ago, and he said, "You're causing trouble again?" The burly man nodded and smiled bitterly. Big Yellow chased after the Tiandu Buddha Emperor all the way into the territory of the Hidden Land realm. Along the way, he shouted that it was not easy for him to come out, so he must kill all the bald donkeys in the Hidden Land realm. The man was startled, then he laughed, which was rare. "Looks like Big Yellow knows me the best. He knows that I hate bald donkeys the most." The burly man said worriedly, "My lord, I heard that the Hidden Land realm is going to send the Emperor Ancestor to deal with Big Yellow." "I'm worried," the man said disapprovingly. "You have to look at the owner before you beat a dog. Would they dare to kill Goldie?" The burly man said, "But they all said that Heavenly Emperor sure bore a grudge against you, master, and has gone into hiding, not daring to show up in the dark world again." The man fell silent for a brief moment before he responded, "They're right. I won't appear for the next year indeed. Tell Big Yellow that if it dares to ruin my plan, I'll kill it and make it into a stew." Make it into a stew? The burly man almost drooled when he thought of the countless treasures of heaven and earth that had been eaten by the big yellow dog over the countless years, and of its plump and tempting tendons. Ever since Big Yellow appeared in the Bronze Sparrow Tower, old guys like them in the tower had not eaten dog meat for a long, long time. The reason was very simple. Whoever ate dog meat would be ruthlessly bitten by the crazy Big Yellow. Moreover, Big Yellow's combat strength was extremely abnormal. The old people in the Bronze Sparrow Tower all had painful experiences of being chased and bitten by dogs. The burly man swallowed his saliva without a trace and said, "My lord, I'll definitely convey your words to him." As he said this, he hurried away as if he was eager to get into action. "This year I'll shelter you from the wind and rain. After a year, if you still can't get my approval," the man stared at the dark world, "then you don't deserve to be my little junior brother." In the primordial era, There was a son, Zhongqiu, who was born with a proud and unyielding character. The master of Fengtsuan Mountain took him as a disciple. He ranked second and was given the Taoist name, Modest Jade. A modest gentleman was as gentle as a jade. It was a pity that Zhongqiu was not a gentleman at all. Since he started his cultivation, he had never known what modesty was. He was too arrogant. Some people said that he was arrogant, some said that he had no respect for others, and some said that he was insufferably arrogant and would suffer sooner or later. Because of his arrogance, the Lord of Mind Mountain made an exception and took back his Taoist name. He sighed with emotion with a smile. Zhongqiu's arrogance is just like his heart. The higher his cultivation is, the prouder his heart will be. It can't be changed, and there is no need to change it. From then on, he was the proudest person in Mind Mountain among his peers. In the eyes of the world, there was no one who could be more arrogant than the Lord of the Bronze Sparrow Tower in the Dark World. In short, the word arrogance would run through Zhongqiu's life. There were 33 domains in the Dark World, and the Cold Sky Territory was just one of them. After suppressing Emperor Baki, Lin Sun left the Cold Sky Territory and came to the Qinfeng Territory half a month later. In a valley full of evil mist, Lin Sun sat cross-legged in meditation. Around him, the forbidden formation of Taoism ran to isolate the erosion of the evil mist. In half a month's time, after he'd refined an enormous amount of various divine medicines and treasures of heaven and earth, his cultivation that had suffered from the backlash from the passing restriction divine ability had recovered a long time ago. His snow-white hair had turned jet black once more, and the vital energy throughout his body had recovered to its peak state. Yi was practicing in the sword sheath, Wu Kei returned to the insignificant bow, and so did the spirit of the broken blade. The three artifact spirits had played a crucial role in the battle with Great Emperor Baki, but they had also suffered heavy losses. Originally, their vitality had not been completely restored. After this battle, they were beaten back to their original state. In a short time, they were doomed to be unable to help Lin Sun. But Lin Sun was not worried. If the opponent was not Emperor Baki this time, but other people in the 8th level of the Emperor realm, Lin Sun would not fight so desperately. And it was destined that such a desperate fight would not happen again in the future. Whoosh! After a long time, Lin Sun woke up from meditation. Feeling the surging power and the boiling and roaring qi, he could not help but let out a long breath. Finally, he had completely recovered. Without any hesitation, Lin Sun took out the Tower of Endless Tao and made a move in his mind. Bang! Emperor Baki, who was completely imprisoned, fell to the ground. He was dying and his qi was exhausted. He woke up from a coma. When his vision recovered, he looked at Lin Sun standing in front of him and couldn't help saying in a hoarse voice, "Little guy, you finally can't help but force me to tell you the truth?" "Force me to tell you?" Lin Sun shook his head. "No, I won't. I will never believe what you say." As he said, he waved his fingertips, and wisps of ethereal cyan light and shadow appeared. The light rain was hazy and magnificent. Ba Qi's pupils shrank and he was inexplicably flustered. "If you want to search my soul, it's wishful thinking. Don't forget that I'm in the 8th level of the Emperor realm. I can crush all your spiritual power with a thought." Lin Sun did not say a word and turned a deaf ear to Ba Qi. Only his fingertips gently pressed between Ba Qi's eyebrows. If Ba Qi's spiritual will was still there, he could have killed Lin Sun with a thought. Unfortunately, the spirit of the broken blade had already destroyed his spiritual soul and his cultivation. Only a remnant of his soul was left, and it was firmly imprisoned. In Lin Sun's eyes, Ba Qi was no longer the powerful 8th level Emperor realm cultivator, but a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. "Little bastard, be careful not to go for wool and come home shorn. How can a lowly thing like you shake the will of the Emperor realm?" Ba Qi's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. The bad premonition in his heart was getting stronger and stronger, and he couldn't help but roar. But soon, his expression changed. "What kind of power is this? How did you manage to infiltrate my mental state?" "No." His voice was filled with shock and anger, but before he could finish, Ba Chi's head tilted, and he fell into a strange state of sleep. It was as if he was hypnotized. Lin Sun retracted his fingertips from between Ba Chi's eyebrows. This was a mysterious secret technique recorded in Senior Sister Ruo Su's Great Primordial Heart Sutra. It was called Autumn Dream. It could make the opponent fall into an unconscious sleep and lose all ability to resist. Buzz. Lin Sun took a deep breath and formed a strange seal with both hands. An invisible force emerged and drilled into Ba Chi's body. Suddenly, in front of the handprint condensed by Lin Sun's hands, countless fragmented scenes appeared, just like watching flowers on horseback. This was another type of secret technique called the Origin Heart Seal. It was capable of awakening all the memories and experiences in one's soul and mental state, and it transformed them into scenes that appeared before one's eyes. The scenes that appeared in front of Lin Sun were the scenes in Ba Chi's memory. An existence at the 8th level of Emperor Realm had lived for who knew how many years and experienced many things in the world. His memories could be said to be extremely vast. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Lin Sun found some of the truth he wanted to know. He finally knew that Ba Chi came under orders to destroy the Great Wall of Imperial Pass. The main battlefield of the Dao battle was the Great Wall of Ancient Desolation, the Great Wall of Imperial Pass, which was known as the first natural mode of all ages, the place where emperors stopped. If the Great Wall of Imperial Pass was destroyed, the Ancient Desolation could be controlled, and the Ancient Desolation had the title of the Origin of all Tao. He also knew that the lower world he was familiar with was transformed from the original power of the Ancient Desolation that was shattered in the Dao battle. When he saw the scene when Ba Chi sneaked into the lower world with Yun Qingbai and came to Xiao Empire, Lin Sun clenched his hands quietly. His heart, which had always been tough, was inexplicably nervous. He had already speculated the truth of the Lin family's murder case, but after all, it was just speculation, and he had not seen those bloody scenes with his own eyes. But now, the scenes that happened in that year would be reproduced in Ba Chi's memory, and he would see them one by one. Chapter 2188. Fleeting scenes began to appear in front of Lin Sun's eyes, like running water. Xiao Empire. The sky over heart-cleansing peak of Lin family in the Forbidden City was as dark as ink. The invisible power of taboo order covered the sky and the earth, making the world full of depression. Ba Chi pointed to heart-cleansing peak in the distance and said coldly, "You are born with sword bone, but it's not strong enough. There is a newborn baby there who is born with an unimaginably powerful spiritual vein. Go and get it." Beside him, Yun Qingbai, who was still a young man, looked lonely and aloof. But when he heard Ba Chi's words, he chose to refuse for the first time in his life. No. He remembered the bloody experience that happened in his family when he was young. He remembered the scenes that his parents suffered and lay in a pool of blood because of his sword bone. He didn't want the same thing to happen to him again. Crack! A ruthless slap on Yun Qingbai's face. Ba Chi said expressionlessly, "If you don't go, I will deprive you of your sword bone and give it to the baby as my successor. And you will die." Yun Qingbai trembled all over. He was silent for a long time. Then he lifted his foot and walked to heart-cleansing peak of Lin family in the distance. His white robe also became dim in the night. In the dark night, the power of taboo order was rolling, and a supreme and majestic will power swept over. At the same time, Ba Chi heard an order, "Do it." It was the voice of the nameless emperor. Ba Chi's face changed. He gritted his teeth and followed Yun Qingbai to heart-cleansing peak of Lin family. Heart-cleansing peak was bustling with lights like a dragon. But when Yun Qingbai appeared, the lively atmosphere was broken, and the battle inevitably broke out. The scene changed. Taking advantage of the chaos on heart-cleansing peak, Ba Chi walked silently into a candlelit room. The room was decorated with lanterns and many children's toys. It was full of warmth. On the bed, a baby was lying quietly in swaddling clothes. Ba Chi stepped forward with uncontrollable passion in his eyes. He raised a slender bone knife that had been prepared for a long time. A moment later, the baby let out a heart-wrenching cry. On his thin and tender chest, there was a long and thin wound, and dark red blood was gurgling out. Ba Chi put away the blood-stained white spirit vein and carefully hid it in a bronze box. Be good, I only want your talent. Your life belongs to Venerable Emperor Nameless. Oh, you're still young. You don't know Venerable Emperor Nameless. Just as Ba Chi was about to pick up the baby, something unexpected happened. Bang! The door exploded, and a tall and thin figure rushed in. When he saw the bloody and cruel scene in the room, he was shocked. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he attacked in rage. It was Master Lu. At this point, the image suddenly shattered and dissipated. Lin Sun had already clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his palms and his knuckles turned white. His breathing was rapid, his eyes were bloodshot, and his face was ashen. These pictures were all from Ba Chi's memory. Although they were fragmented, they were enough for Lin Sun to see how the murder happened in Lin family. When the picture appeared again, Lin family's heart-cleansing peak had been covered by a raging sea of fire. Ba Chi stood in the void, holding Yun Qinbai firmly with his left hand. Yun Qinbai roared in a hoarse voice, "Why? Didn't you just seize the spiritual vein? Why did you kill people?" Childish. Ba Chi looked at the sky. In the depths of the darkness, the forbidden power of order was rolling violently, and a man and a woman were fighting fiercely. Strictly speaking, it was the woman who was fighting. She was dressed in a green dress, her black hair fluttering, and her body exuded a terrifying and boundless power. Did you see that? If it weren't for the power of Venerable Emperor's will, do you think anyone could come here at will? Ba Chi's voice was still cold, but it was with uncontrollable fear and dread. But Yun Qinbai had already lost his mind. He kept shouting as if he had lost his mind, Why, old Lu, take my child away!" In the depths of the darkness of the sky, the woman's anxious voice sounded, "You must let him live well, miss." The tall and thin figure of Lu Boya was enraged, and he let out a roar that was like a wild beast that was filled with rage and madness. "Go!" A Taoist sword suddenly appeared in front of the woman, and she waved it gently. A huge crack leading to the outside world was forcibly cut open in the world covered by the forbidden power of order. Boom! The picture was broken again. Lin Sun's expression was uncertain, and the figure of the woman who was fighting with the forbidden power of order still appeared in his mind. She was dressed in a green dress, her black hair fluttering in the wind, and her whole body was filled with a boundless and terrifying aura. Mr. Lu called her Mississippi, and she waved her sword to cut heaven and earth, opening a way for Mr. Lu to escape from the forbidden power of order. Luo Qingxuan. She was his mother. Lin Sun's heart was filled with unspeakable depression, like a drowning man feeling a kind of suffocation. He gasped for breath. The truth of that year turned out to be like this. When the picture extracted from Ba Chi's memory emerged again, it was no longer the scene of Lin family's heart-cleansing peak. Instead, it was a dark void. "I saved your life from the hands of Lu Boya. From now on, this life of yours is mine," said Lu Boya. An indifferent and emotionless voice sounded in the darkness. This was the voice of the former Supreme Venerable Nameless. Ba Chi promised without hesitation, "I'm willing to go through fire and water for you, your majesty. Remember Lu Boya and the baby he saved. No matter how many years later, as long as the baby appears, he will be regarded as a heretic and will be wiped out with all efforts." The voice of the former Supreme Venerable Nameless sounded. "Yes, your majesty," Ba Chi promised. Then he took a deep breath and asked, "Your majesty, that woman, you shouldn't know. If you dare to ask more questions, you may lose your life." Ba Chi trembled all over and dared not say a word more. Have you heard of the Sword of Fate? The former Supreme Venerable Nameless suddenly asked. Ba Qi was stunned and blurted out, Your Majesty, are you asking about the Taoist sword in the woman's hand? The former Supreme Venerable Nameless sounded disappointed. It seems that you don't know either. I was so angry that I became muddle-headed. How could I ask a nonentity like you? Ba Qi's expression was uncertain. He dared not show any dissatisfaction at being regarded as a nonentity by the former Supreme Venerable Nameless. The picture kept changing. Ba Qi took Yun Qi Bai back to the ancient Desolation realm and appeared in the heaven-reaching sword sect. Seeing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but wonder whether his mother, was she alive or dead on the night of the Lin family's murder. Lin Sun was silent for a long time. Everything that he had seen before made him completely understand. On the night of the Lin family's murder, Yun Qingbai's appearance attracted the attention of the strong practitioners of the Lin family. Ba Qi took the opportunity to sneak in and seize the spiritual vein in Lin Sun's body. The reason why Ba Qi could do this so smoothly was that the appearance of the forbidden power of order led his parents away. When Master Lu came to rescue his parents, it was too late. He only managed to save Lin Sun, whose spiritual vein was taken away. After a long time, Lin Sun's expression became complicated with a trace of sadness. So many things happened that year, but why didn't Master Lu tell me? Was he worried about something? Suddenly, Lin Sun noticed that the picture in Ba Qi's memory changed, and a Taoist field full of sacred aura emerged. Headmaster, have you ever heard of the Sword of Fate? Ba Qi stood in the Taoist field and asked Yu Kuan-zi. Yu Kuan-zi was stunned. The Sword of Fate? Ba Qi said, Yes, a mysterious Taoist sword that can easily break the forbidden power of order. Yu Kuan-zi was surprised. Does this sword really exist? I only heard that one must find a treasure called the Sword of Fate if he wants to go to the Ruins of Fate, one of the 4 ancient divine ruins. But it's just a legend after all. Since ancient times, no one has seen the Sword of Fate. Why do you say that this sword can break the forbidden power of order? Could it be that you've seen this sword before? Ba Qi looked disappointed and said, Nothing. I only know that the nameless Supreme Emperor cares about this sword very much. And this sword is in the hands of a woman whose life or death is unknown. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. The picture disappeared. Lin Sun was stunned. He also thought of the scene he had seen before. His mother, Luo Qingxuan, waved the sword and opened a way for Master Lu. The sword in her hand was obviously the Sword of Fate. Since it could easily break the forbidden power of order, this sword was certainly extraordinary. According to Yu Kuan-zi, the sect master of the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect, this sword was also a key to the Ruins of Fate. Lin Sun had already entered the Ultimate Ruins and entered the Kunlun Ruins, so he naturally knew how mysterious and extraordinary the existence of the 4 great god ruins was. Among the 4 divine ruins, the most mysterious were undoubtedly the Ruins of Fate and the Ruins of Wonder. Could it be that Mother had planned to go to the Ruins of Fate? Otherwise, why would the Sword of Fate fall into her hands? If that's the case, if Mother was still alive, would she have taken the Sword of Fate to the Ruins of Fate to avoid the pursuit of the nameless Supreme Emperor? For a moment, all kinds of speculations appeared in Lin Sun's mind. Although he could not make a clear judgment in the end, he still firmly remembered the Sword of Fate. As he continued to look, the picture that appeared in Ba Qi's memory no longer had anything to do with the Lin family's murder. However, when he saw Ba Qi talking to Yu Kuan-zi and the others in the sect when he came to the Cold Sky territory, it attracted Lin Sun's attention. A year later, the Oblivion Tribulation descended. It was both a catastrophe and an unprecedented supreme creation. This creation was related to a Taoist hymn. The path of the immortal supreme being, Nirvana in Ishvara. The Oblivion Tribulation of eternal oblivion, a lone lotus bloomed. So it's not only Region Lord Huang Ho, even the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect has their eyes on this Nirvana in Ishvara. Chapter 2189. In Ba Qi's memory, Shi Tiandi had arrived in the Dark World a month ago, but left only 1 day later. It was said that he had gone to the Ultimate, one of the 4 great ancient ruins. Knowing this, Lin Sun suddenly realized that the purpose of Shi Tiandi going to the Ultimate was the ruins of Fangtsuan Mountain. However, the gate of Fangtsuan Mountain had long been destroyed. What was Shi Tiandi going to do? At the same time, Lin Sun also heard that Tower Master Bronze Sparrow had refused to see Shi Tiandi, and that Shi Tiandi bore a grudge against him. This guy is really arrogant. Lin Sun sighed with emotion. After arriving in the Dark World, he also learned that Tower Master Bronze Sparrow was regarded as the most arrogant person in the whole world. But he still didn't expect that Tower Master Bronze Sparrow would dare to directly refuse Shi Tiandi. In the entire Starry Ancient Road, there were few who dared to do so. It should be known that in the face of Shi Tiandi's threat, the black-yellow Taoist court could only bow its head and surrender. In such a comparison, it could be imagined how amazing Tower Master Bronze Sparrow's refusal was. Lin Sun still didn't know that this extremely arrogant Tower Master Bronze Sparrow was the second successor of Fangtsuan Mountain, Zhongqiu. But this didn't hinder his admiration for Tower Master Bronze Sparrow. In other words, those who dared to fight against Shi Tiandi were worthy of admiration. When Ba Qi woke up, he saw Lin Sun standing in front of him, holding a dazzling and sharp saber in his hand. Ba Qi narrowed his eyes. The most precious treasure of the Shang family. What are you going to do? Lin Sun pointed to his chest and said, You dug away my spiritual vein that year. Today I will naturally return the favor. Puff. Before his voice died away, Lin Sun had already thrust the saber into Ba Qi's chest. The blade easily pierced through his muscles, bones, and skin and reached the place where his heart was. As Lin Sun twisted his wrist, a dull sound of explosion mixed with scarlet blood splashed out from Ba Qi's chest. As an 8th-level Emperor Realm cultivator, Ba Qi had experienced countless dangers in his life, so he naturally wouldn't be frightened by such a small trick. As if he couldn't feel the pain, he stared at Lin Sun expressionlessly and said, You don't know what the 8th-level Emperor Realm is. With your strength, even if you smash my bones, destroy my body, and mince my soul, you can't kill me. His tone was calm, and it revealed a ridiculing tone of superiority. Lin Sun didn't seem to be aware of it. He cut open Ba Qi's heart meridian with the sharp blade and said, I just want to give you a tooth for a tooth. I don't intend to kill you like this. He paused for a moment and stared at Ba Qi's chest that was still gurgling with blood. His gaze was calm like an ancient well as he added, I've said it before, you only have one ending. His voice was even calmer and unperturbed. Looking at Lin, who was not affected at all, Ba Qi felt a chill in his heart and asked, What's the ending? A life worse than death, Lin Sun said casually. It was merely 4 words, yet it caused Ba Qi's expression to change. Worse than death meant that he could neither live nor die. It also meant that he would suffer endless torment, torture, and humiliation, and he would never be able to extricate himself. Aren't you worried that there might be some accidents in the future? Ba Qi took a deep breath and said calmly, As long as I seize a chance, you will definitely die. Don't worry. Even if I die, I will let you live a life worse than death, and you will never be able to extricate yourself. Lin Sun looked calm. As he said, he took out the Tower of Endless Tao and suppressed Ba Qi again. Clatter the next moment, Lin Sun put away the forbidden formation that covered the canyon and flashed away. In his palm, an antique bronze mirror appeared, which was a gift from Qing Ying, the mysterious woman of Mist-Hidden House. It was called Guiding Bronze Mirror, which contained a map. With the guidance of the map, one could reach the Dark Land. The Dark Land was the primordial ancestral land of Mist-Hidden House. Qing Ying once said that as long as Lin Sun went to her, she would tell Lin Sun something that would do him no harm. Lin Sun was not interested in this. What he was really interested in was whether Qing Ying knew some extremely secret things with her ability. For example, the clues related to the second senior brother of Mountain Heart. For example, the mystery contained in the sentence, "The one who tied the bell should untie it." The sun rose and set. Time flew by. The sensation caused by Lin Sun, the successor of Mountain Heart, gradually died down as time went by. For the strong who made a living in the dark world, their lives were faced with life and death at any time. It was impossible for them to pay too much attention to the life and death of others. The order to arrest Lin Sun was still carried out, but only the big forces such as the Hidden Land Realm and the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect were really dispatched to carry out this task. However, these big forces also knew that it was more difficult to arrest a young man who could suppress Great Emperor Baki than to find a needle in a haystack. Half a month later, Lin Sun crossed 3 territories and entered the Donghong territory. Soon after entering the Donghong territory, Lin Sun successfully condensed the consciousness and cultivation of the Platinum Taoist body. At the same time, Lin Sun's cultivation had improved, and there were signs that he was approaching the consummation of the third heaven of Quasi-Emperor. The Sword Emperor of Chaos had mostly recovered from his injury, but he was still firmly suppressed when he fought with Lin Sun. In this regard, the Sword Emperor of Chaos was silent for a long time, and only said one sentence: "Since ancient times, you are the first person to surpass the natural chasm of the Emperor realm and defeat a person in the first level of the Emperor realm. Although I hate you to the core, I have to admit that you are really abnormal." Lin Sun didn't comment on this. He didn't tell the Sword Emperor of Chaos that if he used the other doppelgangers together, the latter would only be defeated faster and more miserably. 1 month later, in a deep forest that covered the sky and the sun, Lin Sun sat cross-legged in meditation. During this period of time, he didn't hurry on his journey, but regarded this journey as a cultivation. When he traveled day and night, he also calmed down and immersed himself in cultivation. The turbulence, blood, and killing of the dark world had long been unable to affect him. Even if he encountered some trouble along the way, he could easily solve it in a flash. Buzz. With a strange wave, 5 doppelgangers of the Great Way appeared around Lin Sun: green wood, yellow soil, black water, red fire, and platinum. Each of them, with consciousness and cultivation, had a natural resonance with Lin Sun. So far, Lin Sun had passed on the power of inheritance he possessed to the 5 doppelgangers of the Great Way to comprehend and deduce. As for himself, he spent all his time and energy on refining his own cultivation and martial art. Things like comprehending Taoist scriptures, perceiving the Great Way, deducing secret methods, and so on, all didn't need his time and energy. In the past, he cultivated alone. But now it was like 6 of him cultivating together. Under such a unique way of cultivation, all the power Lin Sun mastered began to transform by leaps and bounds. After all, today, he didn't lack Taoist gems, magic medicines, Taoist scriptures, and secret methods. With the help of the doppelgangers of the Great Way, it was difficult for his strength not to improve. It was also on this day that Lin Sun's cultivation reached the fulfillment of the third sky of the Quasi-Emperor realm. He was only 1 step away from becoming an emperor. Once he took this step, he would be a great emperor on the road to extinction. If he couldn't cross it, all his cultivation would be in vain. Lin Sun had a strong hunch that becoming an emperor would be the most difficult and terrible hurdle he had encountered so far in his cultivation. Since ancient times, quasi-emperors could be seen everywhere on the ancient road of the starry sky, but the supreme quasi-emperors were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Whether in the primitive age, the ancient age, or in the present world, among thousands of quasi-emperors, there might not be one supreme quasi-emperor. All this was because the word supreme was too difficult and obscure. In contrast, the people in the emperor realm were also rare. In general, if there was one emperor realm in a force, it could be called a first-class force in the world. Like in the cold sky territory of the Dark World, how vast the territory was, but only the 10 major territory lords had the cultivation of the Emperor Realm. This was why the Emperor Realm was regarded as the supreme, because in the eyes of the strong people under the Emperor Realm could be called the strongest power in the world. And compared with the people in the Emperor Realm, there were even fewer people in the Emperor Realm. The Emperor Realm was like a natural moat, blocking the path of countless cultivators. To establish the cultivation of the Emperor Realm on the road to the Supreme was more difficult than ascending to the heavens. On the ancient road of the starry sky, in the countless years since ancient times, the number of people who had set foot on the road to the Supreme of the Emperor Realm could be counted on one's fingers. And such existences were all terrifying characters who led the way on the road to the Emperor Realm, and the power they possessed was enough to make ordinary Emperor Realm cultivators tremble in fear. According to ancient records, in the early days of the Primitive Age, there were many supreme great emperors who appeared out of nowhere, and in the Ancient Age, there would be a peerless hero who set foot on the road to the Supreme Emperor Realm every once in a while. Until nearly 100,000 years ago, there was very little news of an expert setting foot on the road to the Supreme Emperor Realm on the ancient road of the starry sky. For example, in the recent trip to the ancient immortal forbidden area, the core successors of the 6 major Tao courts had gone there to fight for the Chaos Treasure, but more importantly, to set foot on the Supreme Emperor Realm. Only then would they have the opportunity to seek the proof of the Supreme Emperor Realm. Like Mi Wuyao, Ling Hongzhuang and other peerless geniuses, all had such ambitions. Lin Sun was no exception. Now he was already at the perfection of the 3rd heaven of the Quasi-Emperor Realm, and the cultivation experience of these years also made him more aware of how difficult and dangerous it was to become an Emperor Realm. But he would not back down. What he sought was the road of invincibility in the past, present, and future. If he couldn't even become an Emperor Realm, how could he talk about invincibility in the future? However, Lin Sun was not in a hurry. The perfection of his cultivation did not mean that his own cultivation had reached the extreme perfection. For example, the understanding of the Great Way and the tempering of his own Tao, there was still room for further tempering and improvement. In any case, at the moment when his cultivation reached the perfection of the Quasi-Emperor Realm, Lin Sun had a hunch that the day when Zhu became an emperor was not too far away. Chapter 2190. Shilua City. It was one of the cities controlled by the true absolute domain lord, one of the 6 domain lords of the Donghong domain. By the window of a restaurant in the city, Lin Sun, who was dressed in a moon-white robe and exuded a calm aura, was drinking alone. He was recalling the map in the guide copper mirror. He had passed through 5 domains and walked for more than a month since he left the cold sky domain. Based on the map of the Land of Darkness, he had traveled more than half the distance. If everything went well, he would arrive there in about 20 days. A group of people walked into the restaurant. They were led by a dignified old man with snow-white hair and a beard. Beside him were a group of men and women. Their arrival attracted the attention of many diners in the restaurant. The reason was that their aura was very different from that of those who had been in the dark world for a long time. They were graceful and proud like the rising sun, shining brightly. Generally speaking, experts who had been in the dark world for many years were fierce, violent, and ruthless. They were like hungry wolves who were ready to risk their lives at any time. Their every move was fierce. They were a group of people who had just arrived in the dark world. They hadn't been soaked in the bloody and turbulent world yet. When this judgment came to the diners' minds, the look in many people's eyes changed. Lin Sun also noticed this scene. He could even clearly tell the surprise, greed, and killing intent surging in the diners' hearts. They were like a pack of hungry wolves staring at a flock of fat sheep that had suddenly crawled up to them. But Lin Sun also knew that if they dared to attack, they would definitely die. Because the old man in the lead was a real Emperor Realm figure, In addition, many of the women following him were at the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. Even the weakest one was at the peak of the third level of the quasi-emperor realm. It was hard not to attract Lin Sun's attention based on this fact alone. It should be noted that peak quasi-emperors were extremely rare. But now there were several of them, and they were obviously from the same force. This was very unusual. The white-haired old man and his group sat down and ordered some food and wine. One of the beautiful women, who was wearing a luxurious robe with golden threads and a jade belt, glanced around and said with a frown, "The smell here is really disgusting." Many people agreed with his words. A young man in a golden robe smiled as he waved a jade fan and said, "Junior Sister Lan Ling, this is the dark world after all. It's filled with barren lands and unruly people. How could our primordial world compare to it?" His words were filled with incomparable pride and superiority. The nearby diners stopped talking. Their eyes flashed, but they didn't say anything. Only they knew what they were thinking. The woman called Lan Ling nodded and said, "Senior brother Fei Lang is right. I've heard of it as well. The world of darkness is viewed as a place of extreme evil, and only those extremely vicious and evil people that the world can't tolerate would flee to this place to seek refuge." They spoke without restraint and didn't try to conceal their words. It was as if they weren't afraid of being overheard by others and were full of confidence. The leading old man with snow-white hair and beard, who looked like an immortal, suddenly laughed. "Now that you're here, if you feel uncomfortable, you can just take action. Elegance and self-restraint never belong to the dark world." His words caused the eyes of all the men and women to light up. Bang! The waiter walked over and threw down a table of food and wine in a rude manner. He said, "A total of 90,000 Dao crystals. Who's going to pay?" Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others were stunned. There were only 2 pots of wine and 4 plates of special flavors on the table. In the outside world, there were only a few thousand Dao crystals at most. But here, they dared to ask for 90,000 Dao crystals. "Don't tell me you're treating us like fat sheep and slaughtering us?" Fei Lang's face darkened. The waiter sneered. "Everyone, this is the dark world. Resources are scarce and extremely barren. Especially in this land of turmoil, opening a restaurant requires a huge investment. The price of the food and wine here naturally can't be compared to the outside world." Fei Lang and the others were skeptical. A nearby diner said in a strange tone, "You're new here, right? 90,000 Dao crystals is really not expensive. If you don't believe me, why don't you ask the others? Seeing that you're all dressed in extraordinary clothes, I thought you were extraordinary existences. Who would have thought you're still haggling over 90,000 Dao crystals? What a joke. If you can't afford it, leave quickly." Some of the other diners followed suit. Lin Sun looked on coldly. He knew that the test had already begun. If these guys who had just arrived showed any trace of timidity, they would be targeted. But Lin Sun also knew that this kind of test was really low-end. Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others all had ugly expressions on their faces. It wasn't that they didn't have Dao crystals, but they felt that they had been killed. However, they also doubted whether 90,000 Dao crystals was really the market price. If they were really wrong, wouldn't they have wronged the waiter? Bang! The white-haired old man raised his hand, and the first man who spoke in a strange tone at the table not far away was directly obliterated, his body lying on the ground. Although his body was intact, his divine soul had been erased. The originally lively atmosphere was suddenly replaced by a silent and oppressive atmosphere. All the diners couldn't help but change their expressions. In their experience, the newcomers who had just come to the dark world, no matter how strong they were, would show great forbearance when they didn't know the situation clearly. Who would have thought that the white-haired old man would kill him directly without saying a word? The waiter realized that something was wrong and was about to leave. But the next moment, his figure swayed and he fell silently on the ground. His eyes were dilated and full of confusion. This scene caused Lan Ling, Fei Lang, and the others to be stunned. The person who mocked might deserve to die, but the waiter seemed to have died a worthless death. At this moment the white-haired old man said indifferently, "In the dark world, there is no need for a reason to kill, and there is no need to have any scruples. Remember, we are different from them. They are villains who have fallen into the darkness, and each of them has committed unforgivable bloody crimes. Not killing them is mercy. Killing them is to enforce justice on behalf of heaven and eliminate evil for all living beings in the world. In the final analysis, as long as you are happy, even if you slaughter this city, it is a good deed for the world. Don't have any scruples." The old man looked graceful. Although his words were calm, they revealed full of disdain, which was from the bottom of his heart. The eyes of Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others lit up, and they seemed to be lost in thought and seemed to have come to an understanding. On the other hand, the expressions of the customers present here changed indeterminately, and they seemed as if they were sitting on a bed of needles. They suddenly noticed that it was extremely likely that this was a group of ferocious tigers in sheep's clothing. A few customers couldn't refrain themselves from standing up and intending to leave. Swoosh! Suddenly, Fei Lang stood up abruptly and drew his saber before slashing out. A dazzling saber chi flashed out and flashed lightly before beheading the heads of those customers. The most ingenious thing was that even though the saber chi was fierce and overbearing, it didn't harm the restaurant in the slightest. Otherwise, this restaurant would have been instantly destroyed by this saber strike. Swish! Fresh blood sprayed as numerous headless corpses fell to the ground. Fei Lang sheathed his saber, and his expression carried a trace of excitement as he said, "Martial uncle, I suddenly notice that this dark world is really a good place to temper the martial Tao. In the outside world, there are too many restrictions in order to fight and kill, and I have to consider a great deal. But in here, I'm entirely capable of killing without the slightest scruple." Lan Ling and others were all stunned. Looking at Fei Lang, who seemed to have changed into a different person, some shackles in their hearts seemed to have been broken. The white-haired old man praised with a smile, "You've done a good job. Only by experiencing the tempering of blood and life and death can you be the best whetstone. In the outside world, many descendants of ancient orthodoxies will choose to come to the dark world to temper themselves by killing. This kind of people are regarded as trial testers. So, I can also fight them." Lan Ling was eager to have a try. The white-haired old man laughed. "Of course, you can regard them as weeds, pigs, dogs, livestock. In short, don't regard them as people like yourself." Lin Sun, who had been looking on coldly, raised his eyebrows. This sentence was tantamount to scolding him. In particular, the white-haired old man's point of view seemed to regard the dark world as a slaughterhouse, and he didn't regard the people here as human beings at all. This made Lin Sun quite repulsed. He had been in the dark world for nearly half a year, but he had never regarded people as livestock. In his heart, he only adhered to the idea of, "I won't offend others if they don't offend me." He had never killed innocent people indiscriminately. Even if he also knew that there were hardly any good people in the dark world, this was not a reason for anyone to kill indiscriminately without scruples. Of course, this was just a conflict of ideas. Lin Sun would not get angry because of it. "Senior, please spare our lives. We have eyes but failed to see. Please spare our cheap lives." Those diners were all frightened. They knelt on the ground and begged. "Bastards like you don't have the face to live anymore?" Lan Ling took a deep breath and turned over her hand. A fiery red glow swept out. In an instant, several people were burned to death and turned into ashes. There were also some people who wanted to rush out of the door and escape. However, they were all killed by the joint forces of Fei Lang and the others. The smell of blood was strong. There was a trace of excitement in each of their eyes. Some people couldn't help looking at Lin Sun, who had not taken any action, with killing intent surging in their eyes. In fact, in addition to Fei Lang and others, Lin Sun was the only diner in the restaurant. Wait a minute. Suddenly, the white-haired old man stopped Fei Lang and others from continuing. He looked at Lin Sun and said thoughtfully, "Why don't you beg for mercy or run away?" Fei Lang, Lan Ling and others also looked at Lin Sun, but in their eyes they were more eager to have a try. They thought that although Lin Sun looked a little different from others, he was also a target to be slaughtered without scruples. Lin Sun ignored them and drank up a pot of wine. Then he stood up, carried the bronze sword case on his back, and walked out of the restaurant. From beginning to end, he didn't look at others. But in the eyes of the white-haired old man, Lin Sun's behavior could only be described as arrogant. Chapter 2191. Stop! Someone scolded, his tone full of command. Lin Sun ignored him and walked forward calmly, which made the men and women look a little unsightly. Let him go. The white-haired old man spoke, his eyes frightening. Fei Lang, Lan Ling and the others all revealed a look of surprise. It was not until Lin Sun's figure disappeared that the white-haired old man said slowly, "You have to remember that in the dark world, if you are regarded as an enemy, then the enemy will not care about your identity and background. If you meet someone you can't see through, even if you want to kill him, remember not to act rashly." At the end, the white-haired old man smiled. "Of course, maybe I was wrong, but it's better to be safe than sorry." Fei Lang said in surprise, "Even you can't see through that guy's strength? That's a peerless quasi-emperor, but he's different from the others, especially the confidence he showed, which is definitely not fake. This undoubtedly proves that he is not afraid of us." The white-haired old man said, "Because of this, it's better to be careful." His words were steady and steady. Some people looked thoughtful, while others were quite unconvinced. Fei Lang said coldly, "If I have a chance to meet him next time, I must find out the kid's strength. Let's go, before the nirvana of freedom appears a year later. We have one more thing to do." The white-haired old man led a group of people out of the restaurant. "Uncle, where are we going this time?" Lan Ling asked curiously. The white-haired old man said softly, "Myriad Star City, wonderful lotus gathering." Lin Sun couldn't help feeling slightly surprised that the white-haired old man and the others did not catch up with them until they left Shilua City. "That old guy has good eyesight." Lin Sun shook his head and put this little episode behind him. In the following time, he continued to hurry along the road, moving forward according to the direction of the copper mirror map. Along the way, he was alone, carrying a sword case, trekking over mountains and rivers, enjoying the sunset glow and drinking the dew. His state of mind was unprecedentedly calm and leisurely. Walking was like Zen, sitting was like Zen, silent and natural. This was both a journey and a cultivation. The turbulent and chaotic dark world seemed to have nothing to do with him. Another half a month passed in a hurry. Yunhua Domain. One of the 33 domains of the Dark World, it had been controlled by the forces of the Hidden Land Realm since ancient times. In the vast territory of the Cloud Flower region, there were countless cities, and in almost every city, there was a Xidagarba temple. In every temple, there was a statue of a divine beast. It was said that the statue was the original face of the founder of the Hidden Land Realm, the Xidagarba Emperor. Cloud City. It was one of the many cities in Yunhua Domain. When Lin Sun walked into the city alone, he found that there were many barefoot, black-clothed, and indifferent-looking monks from the Hidden Land Realm among the practitioners in the city. Wherever they went, the ferocious-looking experts all moved to the side and revealed respectful and submissive expressions. Lin Sun saw an expert in the quasi-emperor realm bowing his head to a group of black-robed monks in the sage realm. This surprised Lin Sun. From this, it could be seen how powerful the Hidden Land Realm was in the territory controlled by the Hidden Land Realm. Even ordinary monks didn't dare offend them when they went out. Have you heard? Those experts from the various worlds have already headed to Myriad Star City from all directions. Supposedly, they're going to participate in the Wonderful Lotus Banquet. The Wonderful Lotus Banquet? Exactly. This is an unprecedented grand event. Supposedly, It's jointly held by the two overlords of the Hidden Land Realm and Divine Illumination sect, and it's for the sake of the supreme fortune related to rebirth of freedom. I've heard about it too. Recently, the 6 great Tao courts, the 10 great war clans, and some primordial imperial clans from other galaxies have all sent powerful teams to the Dark World. It seems like they're all here for the Nirvana unfettered. A wave of discussion drew Lin Sun's attention. In fact, there was utterly no need for Lin Sun to inquire about it, as he'd quickly found out about all this. Because the streets and alleys of Cloud City were filled with people discussing matters related to the wonderful Lotus Banquet, and it was difficult for others to not know about it. The third tribulation of oblivion would descend 1 year from now, and rebirth of freedom would appear in the world along with it. A piece of news like this had drawn the attention of everyone in the universe since a long time ago. After all, it was related to the eternal exalted path, and such a supreme fortune had never appeared since the ancient times until now, so how could anyone not care about it? Moreover, everyone knew that the Dark World was the place where the tribulation of oblivion would erupt. It was precisely because of this that some of the ancient powers in the universe had set out successively during this recent period of time. All of them relied on the teleportation formations of the Divine Illumination sect and the Hidden Land Realm to arrive at the Dark World, and it instantly caused the entire Dark World to be stirred. After all, in the past, the Dark World was the land of evil that was most detested and rejected by the cultivators of the world. Even the 3 giants of the Dark World were hostile to the sects of the world, and they could be said to be incompatible like fire and water. Yet now, this situation of confrontation and hostility seemed to have been broken, and when the great powers of the outside world arrived successively, they even relied on the teleportation formations of the 3 giants of the Dark World. On the other hand, the holding of the wondrous Lotus Banquet was even more astounding. It was the Hidden Land Realm and Divine Illumination sect that held the banquet, whereas the participants of the banquet were the various great powers of the starry sky. This undoubtedly seemed to be extremely unbelievable, but when Lin Sun found out about all this, he guessed the reason at the first possible moment. The reason the great powers of the starry sky were able to bury the hatchet and cooperate with the Dark World was probably because of the eternal exalted path, rebirth of freedom. This was extremely normal. The great figures of the Hidden Land Realm and Divine Illumination sect from the Dark World had similarly come from the Hidden Land Realm and Divine Illumination sect, and they'd helped the previous Emperor Nameless deal with Mount Heart. Looks like those fellows I encountered in Shilua City have come for the rebirth of freedom that's about to appear a year from now. Lin Sun recalled the white-haired old man, Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others, and only now did he understand why these figures that boasted of being extraordinary would appear in the Dark World. Unfortunately, even though there were many people discussing the wondrous Lotus Banquet on the streets, no one knew exactly what this banquet was for. The only thing they could be sure of was that this banquet was surely related to rebirth of freedom. It's fine if I don't go to such a place. Lin Sun pondered for a short while before he made a decision. The wondrous Lotus Banquet would be held in Myriad Star City 10 days from now, and Myriad Star City wasn't too far away from Convergence City that Lin Sun was currently at. But Lin Sun still decided not to go and join in the fun. No matter if it was the Hidden Land Realm, Divine Illumination sect, or the various great powers from the heavens, all of them had received orders from Heavenly Emperor Shur, and they were searching for him all over the world. To Lin Sun, the wondrous Lotus Banquet was like a huge vortex, and once his identity was seen through, the consequences would be unimaginable. Subsequently, Lin Sun strolled about for a while, and he was just about to leave the city and continue on his way when he suddenly noticed an ancient temple standing towering not too far away. The temple was tall and lofty, and it towered into the sky. It was completely pitch black, and it seemed as if it was covered in a layer of eternal darkness, ancient and solemn. Before the temple hung a horizontal board with the words Xitigarbha Temple. At this moment, There were many strong practitioners going in and out of the Xitigarbha temple. Every one of them looked solemn and pious. Look, that's the Xitigarbha temple. It's in the territory of Yunhua domain. If you want to enter the city and get protection, you don't need to pay any Taoist gems or treasures. You only need to go to the Xitigarbha temple and worship it devoutly every 7 days. Because of this, many people like us who can't get a foothold in the dark world will come to the territory of the Hidden Land realm to seek protection. Someone nearby said excitedly. Let's go there too. Lin Sun looked up and saw that person calling his friends and walking towards the Xitigarbha temple together. As long as I worship it devoutly, I can get protection? Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep as he looked at the temple that was covered in darkness in the distance. An uncontrollable thought emerged in his heart. Is there really such a good thing in this world? While thinking, Lin Sun walked towards the Xitigarbha temple. Before entering Yunhua City this time, he also heard that in the vast territory controlled by the Hidden Land realm, there was a Xitigarbha temple in every city, in which a statue of a divine beast was enshrined. It was said that the divine beast was the original appearance of Xitigarbha Emperor, the founder of the Hidden Land realm. Lin Sun couldn't help but be curious and wanted to find out the truth. After all, he and the Hidden Land realm were sworn enemies. After entering the temple, Lin Sun only felt that it was dark in front of him, as if he had walked into a silent and dark world. The first thing that came into view was a vast Taoist field, paved with dark brick. The color was so dark that it made people's heart palpitate. Bronze Buddhist lamps floated in the surroundings, and their flames flickered, sprinkling down a holy light. At the end of the Taoist field was a high Buddhist niche with a height of 300 meters. On both sides of the Buddhist niche, there were stone statues of lions, tigers, giant elephants, unicorns, xieji, xuelwan, and other beasts. There were more than 3,000 statues in total. Each stone statue was lifelike, exuding different power and charm, as if it could wake up from silence at any time. In the Buddhist niche, there was also a statue of a beast, but its appearance was extremely strange. Its head was like a lion and tiger, its mouth like a crocodile, its eyes like a snake, its ears like a cow and a horse, its scales like a fish and a snake, its feet like a phoenix, its horns like a cow and deer, its beard like a dragon, and its tail like a dog. Lin Sun had also heard some myths and legends about the 4 odd beasts, but the statue in front of him could be called 9 odd beasts. It sat cross-legged on the Buddhist shrine with its eyes closed, and its body towered like a mountain. Its entire body was covered in darkness that was hazy like mist, and it was like a god that came from the darkness and emitted a might that seemed as if it looked down upon the world. It was truly too strange and horrifying. No matter who saw it, their minds would be shaken. Even Lin Sun couldn't help narrowing his eyes and feeling inexplicably cold in his heart. Was this the founder of the Hidden Land realm? Thanks to Promise in Heart, Book Friend 36009917, Little Brother Reading, and Yomail for their gifts and support. Chapter 2192. The Hidden Land realm, one of the 3 dark giants, was so powerful that it could even cause fear in the starry sky. The founding ancestor of such a terrifying power was actually a divine beast of the 9 odd beasts. This was naturally inconceivable. After staring at the huge Buddha niche for a while, Lin Sun moved his eyes and looked around. Darkness, like a veil, shrouded the temple. On the vast Taoist field, many figures had already knelt on the ground. Regardless of their cultivation, all the strong men kowtowed to the ground devoutly. In front of each of them, there was an incense burner in the shape of a black lotus, in which a stick of incense was lit. The incense flickered, giving off wisps of refreshing fragrance. The atmosphere was extremely solemn. Noticing the wisps of incense curling up like mist, Lin Sun narrowed his eyes. Buzz. Quietly, the spirit sitting cross-legged in Lin Sun's sea of consciousness opened its eyes and condensed a complicated and obscure seal in front of it. At the same time, a wisp of mysterious light appeared in Lin Sun's pupils. This was a secret method recorded in the Taoist scripture Qi Men Jian taught by Bo Xuanzi, the eighth senior brother of Mount Fang Siyuan. It was called Divine Eye. By using this secret method, one could see through the changes of Zhou Su and see through the true nature of all things in the world. It was the most wonderful method. Bo Xuanzi was known as the richest god of wealth in Mount Fang Siyuan. The treasures he owned could be said to include the rare treasures of the four seas and the heavens. When Lin Sun was searching for treasures, the Divine Eye played an indispensable role. As the Divine Eye was opened, the scene in Lin Sun's field of vision suddenly changed. Under the ground of the huge Taoist field, there were Taoist patterns crisscrossing like a spider web, with strange and obscure fluctuations. The incense burners in front of the strongmen who knelt on the ground were located in the center of these Taoist patterns. With the circulation of the Taoist pattern formation, the incense in the incense burner silently released a kind of undetectable power. When these strongmen were worshipping devoutly, they didn't notice that wisps of power of the great way from them were being extracted and poured into the incense burner in front of them. Seeing this scene, Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked. This enormous Tao grounds was like a place of sacrifice. Through the Tao marking grand formation beneath the ground and the incense burner as a medium, it was like countless tentacles that took those experts that were worshipping piously as sacrifices for the sake of extracting the wish energy of the grand Tao. All living beings possessed the wish energy of all living beings, and every single cultivator had once established a grand wish of the Saint Tao when they attained the Saint Realm, and it could be considered as the wish energy of the grand Tao. This was a boundlessly mysterious power. Some sages could even be bestowed the title of sage with the power of the great Tao's wishes. For example, on the ascension platform of Kunlun ruins, Lin Sun became a sage by relying on his own wish power of the Great Way and obtained the supreme inheritance left by the master of mountain heart and mind. This kind of miraculous great Tao power of will was something that no one could detect during cultivation. However, the great Tao that every cultivator pursued would be affected by the great Tao power of will. For example, when Lin Sun was a saint, he had made a great wish, which was, "When I become a saint, my heart is the heavenly heart, my Tao is the great way. When my Tao is proven, crowned with eternity, crowning my head, I will wear immortality as my clothes, with fortune as my boots I will tread on my feet." After he became a saint, the great way he pursued was inextricably related to the great wish of the Saint Tao that he had established. But now, the forces of the hidden land realm were actually using top-secret methods to extract and collect the power of the will of the great path that belonged to those cultivators through the Taoist pattern formation diagram. Such behavior could simply be called evil and unorthodox, and it caused one to shudder with fear. Collecting so much wish energy of the Great Way. What on earth does the hidden land realm want to do? Lin Sun's heart was also in turmoil. Nearly 1/3 of the 33 territories in the Dark World were under the control of the hidden land realm. In each of these territories there were countless cities. If there was a Ksitigarbha temple in each city in these territories, extracting the wish energy of the Great Way from those devout worshippers all year round, how amazing would the number be? Sure enough, there is no such cheap thing in the world. Everyone who wants to seek shelter from the hidden land realm doesn't seem to pay any Taoist gems, but what they send out is their own wish power. Lin Sun sighed inwardly. Today, he accidentally discovered this truth, which made him increasingly disgusted and repelled the hidden land realm. These bald donkeys regarded their opponents as heretics, but they were perhaps the biggest heretics among Buddhist cultivators. Just as Lin Sun was about to leave, he suddenly noticed that on the other side of the vast Taoist field, a group of familiar figures stood there. It was the white-haired elder, Fei Lang, and Lan Ling beside them. There were 2 black-robed monks accompanying them. One was a thin, dark-skinned, middle-aged man with cultivation in the 3rd level of the Emperor-to-be realm. The other was an old monk with wrinkles all over his face. Like the white-haired elder, he was in the first level of the Emperor-to-be realm. They were talking through their divine senses, so Lin Sun couldn't hear what they were talking about. Lin Sun frowned and hid in the crowd without leaving a trace. He wanted to see what the white-haired elder and these people were here for. Not long after, the incense in each incense burner burned out. A group of black-robed monks walked out in a line and put away the incense burners. At the same time, they placed new incense burners on the Taoist field. Only then did the strongmen kneeling in the Taoist field rise to their feet and respectfully salute the huge Buddhist shrines before turning around and leaving. Obviously, every 7 days, they needed to worship devoutly and offer sacrifices for the time it takes to burn an incense stick. Lin soon noticed that the incense burners that had bin taken away were all gathered together and placed on a huge black lotus seat. The black lotus seat glowed and the incense burners suddenly disappeared. At this moment, the old monk who was talking with the white-haired elder and his group stepped forward and raised his hand. The black lotus seat turned into the size of a fist and was held in his hand. Then, the old monk turned back and handed the object to the white-haired elder with a smile. When Lin Sun was about to continue watching, he suddenly heard an indifferent and deep voice. "Now it's your turn. Remember, when you worship, you need to open your mind and be devout and grateful. If you dare to have any disloyalty, you will be captured immediately." A black-robed monk stood not far away, looking at the place where Lin Sun stood, and said solemnly. Suddenly, a group of strongmen who had been waiting in that area like Lin Sun came to the huge Taoist field one after another and knelt down in front of the incense burners with a pious look. Obviously, the sacrifice also needed to be carried out in batches. Soon, Lin Sun was left standing there alone. The black-robed monk said in a deep voice, "Why don't you go? Don't you know that if you want to get the blessing of our hidden land realm, you should keep a pious heart and worship here? For us cultivators, we don't kneel to the sky or the earth. We are not afraid of demons and Buddhas. If our heads are cut off, we will die. If our knees are broken, we will never be able to stand up again in this life." Lin Sun sighed softly and felt a little emotional in his heart. What he saw today was an eye-opener for him, and there was a lingering disgust in his heart. As he said, he was about to turn around and leave. The black-robed monk's face darkened and he said, "You entered the Ksitigarbha temple and still want to leave like this. What do you think our hidden land realm is? If you don't kneel down now, don't blame me for being rude." His cold voice attracted many people's attention. Many black-robed monks came from different places and stared at Lin Sun indifferently, as if he dared to disobey, he would be sentenced to death as a heretic. "Hey, isn't that the arrogant guy?" The movement here also attracted the attention of the white-haired old man and his people. Fei Lang looked surprised and said, "Why is he here?" Lan Ling next to him showed a playful look and said, "It seems that there will be a good show." "Do you know this person?" asked the old monk. "I don't know him. I only met him once over 10 days ago," the white-haired old man said calmly. The old monk nodded and smiled at Lan Ling. "If you want to see a good show, it's easy." As he said this, he waved his hand and gave an order to the black-robed monk in the distance. "Mu He, finish this man quickly. Don't disturb the peace here." The black-robed monk called Mu. He was the one who threatened Lin Sun. Hearing this, his eyes flashed and he also gave an order. "This man is a heretic. He deliberately came to make trouble. Capture him, destroy his body, and refine his soul into lamp oil. Only in this way can he atone for his sins." Yes. The black-robed monks took the order and left. The atmosphere suddenly became extremely solemn. Lin Sun originally planned to leave. Even though he hated this place, he knew that destroying the Ksitigarbha temple would not make any difference to the hidden land realm. But he didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, he would become a heretic again. Moreover, from the tone of the black-robed monk, it was obvious that he planned to kill Lin Sun and refine his soul into lamp oil. Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh again. You are courting death. Don't blame me for being ruthless. Kill! A group of black-robed monks rushed towards Lin Sun. They all looked indifferent, as if they had no emotions. Their bodies were covered with dark Buddhist light, which made them extremely powerful. Boom! But their attacks hadn't even arrived before Lin Sun when they exploded into pieces in unison, and they transformed into a rain of light that scattered down. Some treasures even shattered on the spot and emanated ear-piercing explosions. The black-robed monks' pupils shrank, but they were not afraid. Instead, they continued to rush towards Lin Sun. This was the successor of the Ksitigarbha temple. They were not afraid of life and death at all. They would not give up until they achieved their goals. This was also the most frightening thing to all practitioners. Unfortunately, they met Lin Sun this time. Since you like to make people kneel so much, then all of you kneel. Lin Sun looked indifferent and stood still. But as his voice came out, it exploded in the hearts of the black-robed monks like thunder, producing a terrifying and boundless power. In an instant, as if they were struck by lightning, they twitched all over and fell to the ground with a series of thuds. Blood flowed from their 7 apertures, and they let out muffled groans. Chapter 2193. The Ksitigarbha Wonderland was the territory of the Hidden Land realm. Therefore, when they saw the black-robed monks rushing towards Lin Sun, Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others were all watching the fun. When they first met Lin Sun's arrogant behavior made them very uncomfortable. They wanted to see just how capable this arrogant fellow was. Then, they saw the scene of the monks kneeling on the ground. Lin Sun stood still and did not make a move. This strange scene caused the pupils of Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others to constrict. The strongest of those monks is only at the Saint King realm. There is no emperor to be. It's normal that they were suppressed by that guy's words. If it were me, I could do the same. Fei Lang said in a low voice. In their group, the weakest was at the 3rd heaven of the quasi-emperor realm. Fei Lang and Lan Ling were even at the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. Although they were somewhat surprised by Lin Sun's words of law power, they were not surprised. The white-haired old man looked on indifferently and did not make any comment. The old monk at the emperor realm next to him frowned and said to the skinny middle-aged monk, Jingqiu, go and capture that heretic. The skinny middle-aged monk called Jingqiu nodded, and then his figure swiftly vanished on the spot. The black-robed monks knelt on the ground, blood dripping from their 7 orifices. They were like a group of trapped insects, unable to move or resist. The scene caused the sacrificers, kneeling on the dojo, to be startled, who immediately glanced in the direction with astounded expressions. No one could believe that there was someone in the world who dared to make trouble in the territory of the Hidden Land realm. For a moment, Lin Sun, who was alone in the field, suddenly became the focus of attention. At this moment, the skinny middle-aged monk Jingqiu appeared out of thin air. Without any nonsense, he rushed towards Lin Sun with the black Buddhist staff in his hand. Boom! The Buddhist staff swept through the air, rolling up endless black Buddha's light and condensing into a solemn shadow of the Buddha. Their power was immeasurable, and they rushed towards Lin Sun together. Lin Sun flicked his fingers. Clang! Amidst a deafening explosion, the black staff shattered inch by inch, and the Buddha phantoms that condensed from it dispersed like flowers in a mirror and the moon in the water. Jingqiu, the successor of the Hidden Land realm, who was a 3rd-tier quasi-emperor, spurted blood from his mouth and nose. He staggered and fell heavily to the ground. His face was pale and his aura was in disorder. For a moment, he was unable to stand up. You're asking for humiliation, Lin Sun sneered. With his current cultivation base, he could easily suppress a 1st-grade martial emperor like the chaotic Sky Sword Emperor. How could he possibly take a 3rd-grade quasi-emperor seriously? The surroundings were deathly silent. When they witnessed this scene, no matter if it was those sacrificial participants or the distant Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others, all of them were shocked while their expressions changed indeterminately. With a flick of his finger, he shattered the staff and heavily injured Jing Chu. Looking at Lin Sun's calm attitude, it formed a sharp contrast and was particularly shocking. You've all seen it. This lad is not someone an ordinary quasi-emperor Zhu Hua can compare to. It was also at this time that the white-haired elder spoke, his eyes flashing like lightning. If it were you, would you be able to do the same? Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others looked at each other. If they had gone all out, they might have been able to do it, but Lin Sun's flick of his finger was too casual. It was obvious that he had not used his full strength at all. This made them want to refute, but they could not find a good reason. They were speechless for a moment. You already knew that this person was very strong? The old monk's face was a little gloomy. Lin Sun's strength surprised him, but what made him uncomfortable was that the white-haired elder and the others obviously knew that Lin Sun was very strong, but they did not warn him. Instead, they looked like they were watching the show. The old monk couldn't help but wonder if the white-haired old man and the others were here to watch Lin Sun or the Hidden Land realm. You've misunderstood me. I only saw that he was unusual, but I don't know how strong he is. The white-haired old man explained, and then he smiled and said, Of course, if fellow Taoist needs my help, then I will naturally not stand idly by. There's no need. If we cannot suppress a small heretic in the territory of the Hidden Land realm, wouldn't we be a laughing stock? The old monk's expression was indifferent. His eyes flashed with a frightening light as he locked on to Lin Sun in the distance. At the same time, Lin Sun also looked over. His dark eyes were deep and calm. Don't worry. In the future, the Hidden Land realm will not only be a laughingstock, but it will also be removed from this world. His words stunned the white-haired elder and the others. How arrogant! This was the territory of the Hidden Land realm. Everyone knew that the Hidden Land realm was one of the three dark forces. Even on the starry sky ancient path, it was a terrifying existence that many major forces would be afraid of. Who would dare to threaten to remove the Hidden Land realm? Those who overestimate themselves should pay for their crimes with death. The old monk's eyes flashed with a terrible murderous intent. He waved his sleeves. Boom! Heaven and earth turned upside down. A domain of the great path condensed and turned into a dark world, covering Lin Sun and the place where he stood. Everyone, please watch how I refine this boy. The old monk's expression was indifferent. With a single thought, the domain world produced unparalleled power. Thunder surged, the wind and clouds changed, and the Emperor's path filled the world, evolving all kinds of killing power of the great path. As soon as they saw this, a thought came to the minds of Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others. This guy was finished. The Emperor realm was like a natural moat that could not be crossed. It was as supreme as a deity, wielding the power to shake the heavens. As soon as the old monk made his move, there was no doubt about the outcome. But at the same time, boom! An earth-shattering roar rang out. Everyone felt their hearts tremble. They saw the domain world controlled by the old monk burst like a bubble. A tall figure swept out from the rain of light. His bearing was out of this world, like an immortal descending to the world. His style was extraordinary. This, Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others gasped in shock. That was the power of the Emperor realm. How could it be shaken by a quasi-emperor? This was unbelievable. At this moment, the white-haired old man was also shocked. His originally indifferent expression finally changed to one of shock. As an existence of the Emperor realm, he was more aware of the strength of the Emperor realm. Just like the attack of the old monk, it seemed ordinary, but the power of the Emperor realm was enough to suppress all enemies under the Emperor realm. But now, Lin Sun, a peerless quasi-emperor, was able to defeat this attack. This made the white-haired old man somewhat incredulous. His understanding was about to be overturned. This boy must have a powerful trump card in his hands to be able to turn the situation around. The white-haired old man deduced. He did not believe that there was anyone in this world who could surpass the natural moat of the Emperor realm. Such a thing had never happened since ancient times. Therefore, he subconsciously thought that Lin Sun had borrowed some power that did not belong to him. The old monk was also startled, his mind was shaken. After a long while, he said with a gloomy expression, "What a heretic, no wonder you dare to come and cause trouble. So you have something to rely on. But in my eyes, no matter how you struggle, you are still an ant." Before his voice died away, he had already attacked again. Buzz. A seal condensed from black Buddhist light appeared out of thin air. The seal was like a blooming lotus, the petals of which were entwined with the obscure power of the law of Emperor. As this seal was slapped out, the entire Ksitigarbha temple shook. Countless Tao markings and formations appeared to resist and dissolve this fluctuation. Otherwise, everything in the temple would be wiped out in the blink of an eye. Boom! The seal was dazzling, whistling through the air. It had the power to blot out the sun. Its power was unfathomable, and it was boundlessly terrifying. Lin Sun did not retreat but advanced. Or rather, at the moment the old monk attacked, he had already made his move. His figure moved through the air. He stretched out his right arm and punched out. Heaven-shaking punch. However, this punch was completely different from before. The fist force was like a cauldron that shone in the sky, like a great abyss that swallowed the sky, and it surged with peerless laws of the Great Way. It revealed a great spirit that shook the heavens and the earth. Boom! An earth-shattering collision sounded. The fist force and the seal collided. It was like two volcanoes that had been silent for thousands of years had erupted at this moment, releasing an unparalleled torrent of power that swept out. Suddenly, the Tao markings and formations that covered the Ksitigarbha temple could not hold on any longer and were directly crushed into pieces. The huge Taoist field, the towering Buddhist shrines were all annihilated. Those sacrificers and the white-haired old man's group had long since seen that the situation was bad and fled. When they saw the Ksitigarbha temple being wiped from the ground, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air and tremble. Boom! The power released by this blow even spread to the entire Yunhua city, causing the entire city and the buildings in the city to tremble and shake violently. Many cultivators scattered throughout the city could not help but be horrified. Their hair stood on end, and they fled in panic like a herd of frightened beasts. My God, someone dares to wantonly destroy the territory of the hidden land realm? Run. This power. I'm afraid it's a figure in the Emperor realm. Run out of the city. This city is doomed to fall. Panicked and noisy shouts resounded in different areas of the city. For the cultivators who had been in the dark world all year round, they were all too familiar with this kind of turmoil and chaos. Almost at the first moment, with their rich survival experience, they all fled out of the city. The white-haired old man and his people were no exception. The battle between Lin Sun and the old monk was like a destructive storm. In the blink of an eye, the entire Yunhua city was in ruins. Countless buildings collapsed, the earth cracked, and the sky and earth were filled with smoke and dust. It was as if an unprecedented earthquake had taken place. Many people fled out of the city, and when they saw this scene, they all broke out in a cold sweat, feeling like they had just survived a disaster. There were also many who did not manage to escape and lost their lives in the city. Looking at this scene from afar, the expressions of Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others changed. Boundless coldness surged in their hearts. That guy, how could he be so powerful? The white-haired old man's eyes flickered with divine light. At this moment, he could not remain calm. A city was destroyed in an instant. Heretic, do you dare to come up and fight? Suddenly, a cold and majestic roar resounded through the sky, shaking the clouds in all directions. Chapter 2194. Buddhist Emperor Du Ping. People recognized at a glance that the old monk was a famous Emperor realm figure in the Hidden Land realm. He had been guarding the Yunhua domain, and his power was as great as the sky. It really is a battle between emperors. Countless people were shocked. Even Buddhist Emperor Du Ping had made a move. How powerful was his opponent? In this extremely somber and oppressive atmosphere, Lin Sun's tall figure stepped into the air like a divine rainbow, illuminating the sky and also reflected in people's vision. A quasi-emperor? How is it possible? Someone cried out involuntarily. Since when does a quasi-emperor dare to challenge an emperor realm figure? Countless people were dumbfounded. This was too unexpected. Old thing, I'll take your head now. Lin Sun let out a long roar. His figure was bright and dazzling as he charged into the sky. Hearing his words, people were stunned again. They didn't dare to believe their ears. That was Buddhist Emperor Du Ping. How could a quasi-emperor defeat him? However, what happened next caused everyone who was paying attention to the battle to be dumbfounded, and their minds went blank. This battle broke out. Buddhist Emperor Du Ping attacked, but he couldn't kill the young man with the cultivation of a peak quasi-emperor at the first moment. This completely subverted people's understanding. It was as if they were witnessing an unprecedented miracle. Under the sky, the divine light was vast and mighty, and the light of the way was rumbling. Lin Sun and Buddhist Emperor Du Ping fought fiercely. The two figures intertwined, and in a flash, they had exchanged hundreds of blows. Heaven and earth were in turmoil, and the sun and moon were dim. Die! Buddhist Emperor Du Ping held a demon-subduing pestle in his hand, and he killed like a god. His whole body was steaming with the Black Emperor law, and it evolved into a green lamp, a pagoda, a Buddhist scripture, a futon, a wooden fish, a bronze bell, and so on. From afar, he was like the legendary Bodhisattva, solemn and majestic, and his power shook the 9 heavens. Rumble! Under his killing, the void was chaotic like a tide, and the sound of Taoism spread like thunder, boundlessly domineering. This was the Emperor realm. Every move he made had the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. In the face of this terrifying killing, Lin Sun's performance was not inferior. His body was shining, and his body reflected the image of the abyss. He performed the furnace method, and he had the power to push the 9 heavens. He didn't give an inch, and he looked disdainfully like a demon. Kill! Lin Sun's black hair flew in the air, and his eyes were as cold as lightning. The chaotic void sword emperor, who was suppressed in the great Tao without end pagoda, was no longer a match for him. Therefore, when he faced the Buddhist emperor who was also at the first level of the emperor realm, he was incomparably confident and had the aura of invincibility. In a flash, Buddha Dharch Du Ping's expression changed drastically, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Ever since he stepped into the emperor realm, he didn't take anyone below the emperor realm seriously. Killing them was as easy as harvesting grass. But now, a quasi-emperor Zhu Hua had disregarded the natural chasm of the martial emperor realm, crossed a major realm, and was evenly matched with him. In the countless years since the ancient times until now, such an incident that seemed to break the rules and overturn everyone's knowledge had never occurred. What made Buddha Emperor Du Ping most incredulous was that the quasi-emperor law that Lin Sun had mastered was almost perfect and flawless. It was no different from the real emperor law. This also allowed him to unleash power that far surpassed what a peak quasi-emperor could unleash in battle, appearing extremely heaven-defying. How could this man be so strong? Who was he? Buddha Emperor Du Ping became more and more frightened as the battle went on. He had already used the real power of the emperor realm, and did not hold back at all. But until now, he had not gained the upper hand. This was even somewhat unacceptable to him. A dignified emperor realm was evenly matched with a quasi-emperor Zhu Hua. If this was spread out, it would only prove that he was very weak and would become the laughing-stock of the world. Kill! Buddha Dharch Du Ping no longer hesitated as he used his trump card ability. His figure suddenly became extremely imposing and tall. He held the demon-subduing pestle in one hand and the golden pagoda in the other. The power of the two emperor weapons covered the sky and earth, causing the world to tremble, all things to turn into powder, and the earth to collapse into a huge ravine. Old thing, you can't do it. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun's abyss-like black eyes were burning with a fierce, fighting spirit. Without hesitation, he used the lawless blade. Swish! The snow-white blade tore the sky and traversed the void. The dazzling blade chi was thousands of feet long. It directly ignored the secret technique that Buddha Emperor Du Ping activated and slashed at him. In an instant, Buddha Emperor Du Ping let out a muffled groan. A horrifying blade wound was torn in front of his body. His skin and flesh were torn open, and blood was dripping. When he saw the lawless blade, Buddha Emperor Du Ping immediately recognized Lin Sun's identity. Because after the end of the game of chess, everyone knew that the lawless blade, which originally belonged to the far ancient imperial clan Shang clan, was obtained by Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Fangsun. But before he could finish speaking, Lin Sun had already attacked. The blade chi was like waves, layer upon layer, covering everything. It was so dazzling that the heaven and earth dimmed, and it was so sharp that even the sun and moon trembled. Buddha Dharch Du Ping blocked and dodged repeatedly, but he was beaten to a point where he seemed to be inferior in comparison. He was battered and exhausted, and he fell into a situation where he could only passively take a beating. Not long after, he was injured again and again. It was not that he was incompetent, but the lawless blade was too overbearing and ignored all the techniques in the world. If he did not use the demon-subduing pestle and the golden pagoda to block, he would have been cut into thousands of pieces by the boundless blade chi. Open! Buddha Emperor Du Ping was bathed in blood, and his eyes were about to pop out. He let out a roar and began to fight with all his might. His entire body seemed to be burning, and the power belonging to the first level of the Emperor realm was activated to the extreme, causing the heaven and earth to fall into great terror. In this regard, Lin Sun was not afraid. Instead, the more he fought, the more courageous he became. His chi and blood were surging, and his fighting spirit was burning. He performed his Tao and techniques to the extreme. This was the second Emperor realm figure he had fought since he started cultivating. Without borrowing the power of Yi, Wu Kei, and the broken blade spirit, he suppressed the opponent with his own Tao. Rumble, the battle became more and more intense. Looking from afar, the heaven and earth were covered by the aura of destruction, and the two figures could not be seen anymore. In reality, powerhouses below the Emperor realm could not watch a battle of this level, and they did not dare to watch with their divine sense. Otherwise, they would be affected. But even so, people were still shocked. What did they see? A peak quasi-emperor was engaged in a heaven-defying slaughter battle with an Emperor realm expert. Just this alone was enough to make the heavens tremble and startle the ages. Poof! In the battlefield, Buddha Emperor Du Ping, who was fighting desperately, was defeated again and suffered heavy injuries. His right arm was chopped off by the saber, and the terrifying saber chi swept across his body, almost splitting him in half. At this moment, the anger, doubt, and disbelief in Buddha Emperor Du Ping's heart were all replaced by an indescribable fear. To be able to cross a great realm and surpass the natural chasm of the Emperor realm to fight with an Emperor realm was already a magnificent feat that had never been seen before, and it could be called a miracle. But now, not only did Lin Sun achieve this, but he also completely suppressed an Emperor realm figure in a head-on confrontation, making him suffer heavy setbacks again and again. If this was spread out, who would dare to believe it? Even the Emperor realm figures in the heavens would be horrified. "Fellow Taoist, let me help you." Suddenly, an indifferent voice resounded, and the white-haired elder appeared out of thin air. His beard and hair were fluttering, and his body was surging with the aura of the Emperor realm. "Fellow Taoist, be careful. This person is heaven-defying and cannot be judged by common sense. If I am not wrong, he is Buddha Emperor Du Ping heaved a sigh of relief and couldn't help but warn. But before he could finish, he was interrupted. I understand. A Taoist sword had already appeared in the white-haired elder's palm, and his aura rushed to the 9 heavens and 10 earths, fierce and murderous. He attacked without hesitation. Buddha Emperor Du Ping was anxious. What do you understand? That guy is Lin Sun, the evil survivor of Mount Fangsuan who once killed great Emperor Baki. But just when he was about to warn again, there was a sudden change in the field. Around Lin Sun, 5 figures suddenly appeared, and each of them was exactly the same as Lin Sun. Although the charm and aura they exuded were different, their aura was as strong as Lin Sun's. 5 Tao doppelgangers. This was also the first time Lin Sun used them in a battle. Greenwood Taoist body controlled the Tower of Ceaseless, Red Fire Taoist body controlled the Boundless Flag, Yellow Earth Taoist body controlled the Lifeless Seal, Black Water Taoist body controlled the Infinite Bottle, Platinum Taoist body controlled the Broken Blade. In an instant, the aura around them resonated with Lin Sun's body, and the power produced was so strong that it directly covered the whole world. Buddha Emperor Du Ping and the white-haired elder's eyeballs almost fell out, and they felt a chill in their hearts. One was already so heaven-defying, and now there were 5 more. How could they fight? Old guy, I have no grievances with you, but you came to die. How stupid are you? A soft sigh sounded from the lips of Lin Sun and the 5 doppelgangers at the same time. Then, they moved together. Boom. Greenwood Taoist body was covered with green light, and he took out the Tower of Endless. Red Fire Taoist body was flowing with divine fire, and he waved the Wufang flag. Yellow Taoist body was as tall as a mountain, and he activated the Lifeless Seal. Black Water Taoist body, all of a sudden, the world there seemed to be broken. All the Emperor weapons of Kunlun cooperated with Lin Sun's doppelgangers, and they rushed out like a tide. That scene was enough to make people desperate. In an instant, the figures of Buddha Emperor Du Ping and the white-haired elder were submerged, and they fell into endless danger. Then, shrill screams and angry and panicked roars rang out. No, little bastard, do you know who I am? The sound shook the world and spread far away. But soon, even the sound stopped abruptly, and only the horrible light of Tao and treasure was flowing in that world. The figures of the 2 emperors, like duckweed involved in the violent turbulence, were torn to pieces and turned into endless blood rain. Boom! The world trembled, and the world was filled with the breath of destruction, as if it was about to be blown up. The onlookers had already fled far away. They could see nothing, and they could not feel anything. Only the fear and horror in their hearts were getting stronger and stronger. Everyone had the same thought in their minds. The 2 emperors, it can't be that he's in trouble, right? When the smoke and dust dispersed, the turbulent and violent torrent of battle receded between heaven and earth. Chapter 2195. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the shattered world was like a crumbled painting. It was a ghastly sight. When everyone's vision cleared up, they finally saw that Buddha Emperor Du Ping and the white-haired elder had long disappeared from the sky. There was only a tall figure that was like a perfectly straight spear that stood in the air. His clothes fluttered in the wind, and his elegant demeanor was matchless. Countless people were shocked out of their wits, and their minds went blank. Dead. 2 martial emperors had died in the hands of a quasi-emperor Ju Ing. This was simply earth-shattering. 4 cultivators below the martial emperor realm. The martial emperor realm was like a natural chasm that no one had ever been able to surpass. But today, such an unprecedented miracle had happened. Many people couldn't help but recall that a few months ago, in the distant domain of Cold Sky, Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Fangsuan who had transformed into the Sword Demon Abyss, had defeated 10 region lords in one fell swoop and suppressed great Emperor Baki. At that time, this incident had caused a sensation in the entire dark world, shocking countless people. But today, 2 martial emperors had also fallen, defeated by a quasi-emperor Ju Ing. For countless years, the Dark World had been turbulent and bloody, but things like the fall of martial emperors had rarely happened. The reason was that the martial emperor realm was like the sky, enough to suppress a region, as if they were supreme and unshakable. But now, in less than half a year, martial emperors had fallen one after another. How could people not be shocked? The most incredible thing was that the person who had killed the martial emperors was not a martial emperor, but a quasi-emperor Juing. That guy can't be Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Fangsuan, right? Suddenly, someone asked in a trembling voice. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples, causing a sensation. It must be him. In the entire starry ancient path, only Lin Sun can kill a martial emperor before becoming a martial emperor. So it's him. This guy is wanted by the entire world, but he doesn't seem to be afraid. Now, he's even fighting in the territory of the Hidden Land realm. He's too bold. If you had the power to kill a martial emperor like him, you could also be so fearless. Countless voices of discussion rang out, mixed with shock, realization, shock, awe, and emotion. The countenances of Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others were ghastly pale while their bodies went cold, and they seemed as if they'd lost their souls. Now they finally realized why the white-haired old man stopped them from making trouble for Lin Sun and let him go when they met for the first time. The unwillingness in their hearts had long since vanished and was replaced by deep fear. So, it's this remnant. After a long time, Fei Lang said bitterly. They came from the Panwu Taoist court of the primordial world, so how could they not know Lin Sun? Back in the ancient immortal forbidden zone, countless Panwu Dao court's core successors had been killed by Lin Sun. Even Mi Wuya had been defeated. However, no one had expected that in less than a year, this remnant of Mount Fangsuan, who was being hunted by the entire world, had grown to such a heaven-defying level. Senior Uncle Su Wuheng is dead. What should we do? Lan Ling could not help but ask. Su Wuheng was the white-haired old man, an emperor of the Panwu Dao court. His death was incomparably unfortunate. This was originally a battle that didn't have much to do with him, but because of his interference, he lost his life. It was as if he was delivering his own head. Let's go to the Million Star City. Fei Lang gritted his teeth and made a decision. The wonderful Lotus Feast would be held in the Million Star City, which was also in the Cloud Flower domain. It was not too far from the destroyed Cloud Flower City. It could be foreseen that when the news of Lin Sun's appearance in the Cloud Flower City spread, it would definitely attract the attention of many magnates. Moreover, the Cloud Flower domain was originally the territory of the Hidden Land realm. Now that Lin Sun had appeared here and killed the Buddha Emperor Du Ping, how could the Hidden Land realm let it go when they heard the news? The world was silent. Lin Sun, who was standing in the void, did not feel any joy or excitement at the moment. Long ago, he could easily defeat the Sword Emperor of Chaos without using the Emperor weapon and the 5 doppelgangers, let alone now. Defeating the Buddha Emperor Du Ping and Su Wuheng was within his control. The only thing that made Lin Sun sigh was that the Emperor realm was really not easy to kill. Just like before, he had used all kinds of methods to destroy the bodies of the Buddha Emperor Du Ping and the Buddha Emperor Du Ping, and even shredded their souls. However, the 2 Emperor Realm cultivators were not completely dead. Their remaining blood stains and broken primordial spirits all revealed the supreme will of the Emperor Realm. It was not that easy to completely erase them. This was the Emperor Realm. Perhaps it was possible to defeat them, but to kill them was very difficult. The reason why Yi Wu Kei and the spirit of the Broken Blade could completely kill the Emperor Realm was because they had the absolute power to crush them. However, Lin Sun was different. The power that he possessed was ultimately not the true power of the Emperor Realm. Previously, if he had not seen the opportunity in time and collected their remnant blood and soul with the Great Way Endless Tower, they would definitely have had the hope of recovering in the future. In an extremely distant place, there was an uproar of discussion. This made Lin soon stop his thoughts and immediately realized that his identity had been exposed. His identity had been exposed. However, he did not panic. After leaving this place, he could change his appearance again. Swoosh! In the next moment, Lin Sun's figure flashed and disappeared in the vast world. On this day, the successor of the Mountain of Mind and Heart, Lin Sun, appeared in the Cloud Flower domain. The news of him killing the Buddha Emperor Du Ping and Su Wuheng spread like a hurricane throughout the dark world, causing a great sensation. Thousand Star City. Recently, the Thousand Star City was like a sacred place in the dark world. It was orderly, and the atmosphere was lively and peaceful. Because of the Wonder Lotus Grand Meet, even the villains, madmen, and ferocious people scattered in the city had been driven away. Inside and outside the city, the successors of the two great forces, the Hidden Land Realm and the Divine Sunlight Ancient Sect, were everywhere. They acted as guards and welcomed the cultivators from other worlds in the starry sky. Martial Uncle, the teams sent by the 6 great Tao courts and the 10 great war clans have all been arranged to stay in the city. In addition, some of the teams sent by the far ancient imperial clans have also been arranged. It is foreseeable that when the Wonder Lotus Grand Meet begins, it will definitely be an unprecedented grand event. It will be enough to make the Hidden Land Realm famous in the heavens. In Akshitagarbha Temple in the city, an old monk who was as thin as a withered tree sat in the lotus position. In front of him, a black-robed monk bowed and reported the recent situation. His expression was filled with respect and awe. The old monk who was as thin as a withered tree was a supreme elder of the Hidden Land Realm. His Taoist name was Du Ming, and he was in existence in the 9th level of the Emperor Realm. Du Ming opened his eyes and said in a low voice, "The people from Copper Sparrow Tower haven't shown up yet?" The black-robed monk shook his head. "I haven't seen any movement from Copper Sparrow Tower until now." "That's good. In my opinion, when Shi Tiandi returns from the ultimate, the 3 dark giants will probably become the 2 dark giants." Du Ming's expression was indifferent, and his sunken eyes were filled with coldness. During the Wonder Lotus Grand Meet, all the great forces of the starry sky had come one after another. It could be said to be an unprecedented grand event. It was to discuss some secret matters related to nirvana of freedom. The Hidden Land Realm and the Divine Sunlight Ancient Sect had joined forces to act as the host. Only Copper Sparrow Tower had not made a move, and it seemed that they had no intention of participating. Moreover, Du Ming had already learned that the Divine Sunlight Ancient Sect had sent Heaven Cluster Sword Emperor to hunt down Lin Sun, the heir of Mount Fangsuan, had been obstructed by the Heavenly Destruction Sky Martial Emperor of Copper Sparrow Tower. The Tiandi Buddhist Emperor, sent by the Hidden Land Realm, had been chased by the big yellow dog of Copper Sparrow Tower, and he had been forced to flee all over the world. This made Du Ming suspect that Copper Sparrow Tower was doing this to protect the heir of Mount Fangsuan and resist the decree from Shi Tiandi. If they dare to resist Shi Tiandi, Copper Sparrow Tower will definitely collapse and be removed from the world. The black-robed monk showed a hint of anticipation. Du Ming grunted and was about to say something when a series of hurried footsteps sounded. Then, a middle-aged monk walked over and said with a solemn expression, "Martial Uncle, the heir of Mount Fangsuan, Lin Sun, has appeared in Cloud City." He told him the news he had just received. When he learned that Buddha Emperor Du Ping had been killed, Du Ming's eyes flashed with a frightening cold light. What a rampant heretic! How dare he come to the Hidden Land Realm and behave atrociously? His voice was full of undisguised killing intent. The middle-aged monk said worriedly, "Martial Uncle, this boy has the means of the slayer. If he comes to the wonderful Lotus Festival to make trouble." Du Ming frowned and said, "Now that the forces of all the major forces in the heavens have gathered here, unless this boy is tired of living, he will not dare to appear in the Million-Star City." After thinking for a while, he issued an order, "Mobilize all the forces and go all out to hunt down this boy." The middle-aged monk's expression changed. Martial uncle, ordinary people are no match for this boy at all. Even people like great Emperor Baki have been in trouble. He was reminding that the current Lin Sun was not someone who could be easily hunted down. Du Ming said expressionlessly, "Don't worry, as long as I can find the trace of this boy, I will go and kill him." So that was it. The middle-aged monk secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and immediately left to carry out the order. At the same time, the experts of all the major forces in the heavens gathered in the Million-Star City also heard about the news of Lin Sun killing Buddha Emperor Du Ping. For a time, it caused a lot of sensation. Forces like Qiankuan, Panwu, Untainted Land, Demons, and Mysterious Yellow were all in a complicated mood. They were shocked and resentful. They hated Lin Sun to the bone. Some of Lin Sun's old rivals, such as Mi Wuya, Ling Hongzhuang, and Hua Xingli, also came to the Million-Star City this time. When they heard the news, they all fell silent. It had been less than a year since the end of the forbidden ancient immortal realm. The guy who was once invincible in the peerless Saint King realm now had the power of the Slayer Emperor. In contrast, these geniuses who were of the same generation as Lin Sun in the past seemed even more unbearable. They could not help but feel that they were far behind him. They knew very well that the current Lin Sun was no longer the same as them. He was far inferior to them. Chapter 2196. The Hidden Land Realm acted very quickly. In just one day, the descendants of the Hidden Land Realm in every city in the vast territory of the Yunhua domain had taken action. Their goal was to arrest Lin Sun, the descendant of Minuscule Mountain. For a moment, the storm was brewing, attracting the attention of countless people. It should be known that the wonderful Lotus Feast would begin in 10 days. Many ancient orthodoxies from all over the starry sky had gathered in the Yunhua domain. For example, the 6 major Tao courts, the 10 war clans, the far ancient imperial clans. At such a critical juncture, Lin Sun, the descendant of Minuscule Mountain, had also appeared in the Yunhua domain. This naturally made people wonder. Did this young man come to participate in the wonderful Lotus Feast? What did he want to do? But everyone was sure that Lin Sun's appearance could not be a good thing. A young man who was wanted by all the heavens and could be said to be the enemy of the whole world. Wherever he went, there would definitely be bloodshed. The Hidden Land Realm's actions were vigorous, and the entire Yunhua domain was enveloped in a somber atmosphere. Everyone was paying attention. Unfortunately, everyone guessed wrong. The reason why Lin Sun appeared in the Yunhua domain was really that he was just passing by. Moreover, he was not interested in the wonderful Lotus Feast at all. He was not arrogant enough to ignore a group of mighty cultivators in the Emperor realm. In the following time, as Lin Sun walked in the Yunhua domain, he also learned that the Hidden Land Realm had mobilized forces to search for him. Right now, the thing that could easily expose his identity was the bronze sword box on his back. This treasure could not be put away, so he could only carry it on his back, which was extremely eye-catching. But Lin Sun was not afraid of anything. No matter how powerful the Hidden Land Realm was, the number of strong cultivators in the Emperor realm was bound to be limited. It was impossible for a large group of them to appear randomly. This also meant that even if his identity was exposed, ordinary enemies would not be able to stop him at all. Buzz. On this day, Lin Sun came to a deserted mountain range. He raised his hand and a black lotus throne appeared. This black lotus platform gathered the power of the great Tao like a river. It was originally given to the white-haired old man, Su Wuheng, by the Buddha Emperor of Salvation. Now, it had become Lin Sun's trophy. Gazing at it carefully for a moment, Lin suddenly remembered something recorded in the tranquility scripture of the Great Treasury. The supreme inheritance of the Hidden Land Realm was the Earth Scripture. It was a supreme Taoist scripture created by the Ksitigarbha Emperor, the founder of the sect. It was rumored that at the beginning of the primordial era, after Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva created this Tao scripture, He left the starry ancient path and headed to the other side of the starry sky in search of a higher Tao. However, according to the Tranquility Sutra, the Ksitigarbha Emperor did not leave. Instead, he chose to rest in a forbidden place in the hidden land realm. This silence was like a form of self-sealing. It was said that it was for the sake of cultivating a supreme secret technique that allowed one to break through the Emperor realm. On the other hand, if he wanted to awaken the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva from his slumber for countless years, then he needed to use the wish energy of the Grand Tao as the source to carry out a sacrifice. In the past, Lin Sun just took it as a secret and didn't take it seriously. But now, after seeing what happened in the Ksitigarbha temple in the Cloud City, Lin Sun suddenly realized that the hidden land realm had been collecting the wish energy of the Grand Tao with a secret technique all these years. The cultivators who protected their territories were like a steady stream of sacrifices. When they knelt down and worshipped, their power of the great paths was silently extracted from them. Eventually, it all fell into the hands of the hidden land realm. For example, the Black Lotus Throne in Lin Sun's hand was a strange treasure called the Lotus Throne of Will. It was a treasure that accumulated and sealed the wish energy of the Grand Tao. After a brief identification, Lin Sun found that there were at least tens of thousands of kinds of wish energy of the Grand Tao stored in the Lotus Throne of Will, each of which belonged to different practitioners. Think about it, the territory controlled by the hidden land realm covered an unknown number of cities, and every single city would carry out a sacrifice every 7 days. In this way, how shocking would the willpower of the Great Path gathered be? If it's really to wake up the sleeping Ksitigarbha Emperor, then the plot of the hidden land realm is too terrible. Lin Sun felt a chill in his heart. The Ksitigarbha Emperor was a supreme figure at the beginning of primitive times. The cultivation he possessed was absolutely unimaginably horrible. If such an existence, which could be called the Dark Supreme Lord, were to wake up after being silent for thousands of years, it would definitely be a thing that could shake the world. At that time, the whole dark world would be dominated by the hidden land realm. Until now, there has been no movement from the hidden land realm. It seems that if they really want to use the wish energy of the Grand Tao to wake up the sleeping Ksitigarbha Emperor, I'm afraid it won't be easy. Lin Sun looked at the Black Lotus Throne in his hand and fell into thought. The wish energy of the Grand Tao was an incomparably wonderful power. It was as elusive as fate and as illusory as time. Now that Lin Sun had all kinds of supreme scriptures, he naturally knew that the wish energy of the Grand Tao also played an irreplaceable key role in the cultivation of the Emperor realm. For example, the Buddha Emperor Du Ping gave this Lotus Throne of Will to the white-haired old man, Su Wuheng. He must also know that the wish energy of the Grand Tao in the Lotus Throne of Will could play a magical role in the cultivation of the Emperor realm. It was a pity that Lin Sun had not yet set foot in the Emperor realm. Although he knew some magical effects of the wish energy of the Grand Tao, he didn't know the specific effects. But Lin Sun was sure that the hidden land realm must have a big plan to collect the wish energy of the Grand Tao so crazily. Do you really think that I'm easy to bully? Before leaving Yunhua Domain, I'll play with you. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep and cold. A long time ago, he had been assassinated by the hidden land realm. After arriving in the dark world, the hidden land realm was like a loyal dog of Shi Tiandi and launched a wanted order for him. Even now, because of his appearance in Yunhua Domain, the hidden land realm had set off a vigorous hunt to kill him. In the past, Lin Sun would have left this troublesome place as soon as possible. But now, he was fearless since a long time ago, so how could he possibly leave just like he had in the past? Green Cliff City. There was a large city in Yunhua Domain. The Ksitigarbha temple in the city was grand and majestic, solemn and sacred. Outside the city gate, a group of descendants of the hidden land realm acted as guard. They carried out a strict inspection on every strong man who entered and left the city before they were allowed to go in and out. The tall city tower was covered with wanted news and portraits related to Lin Sun, as if they were afraid that people didn't know that Lin Sun was the most wanted man in the starry sky. It was a pity that no matter how strict the inspection was, it couldn't stop people like Lin Sun from entering. In fact, when Lin Sun entered Green Cliff City, he didn't attract any attention from beginning to end. Soon, he came to the Ksitigarbha temple. A familiar scene was playing in the temple. A group of strong men who were sheltered in the city were kneeling on the huge Taoist field and worshipping devoutly. In the censer in front of them, the burning incense was silently extracting the wish energy of the Grand Tao from each of them, but they didn't notice it at all. "Do they really want to wake you up from your slumber?" Lin Sun looked at the huge Buddhist shrine standing in the Taoist field. In the Buddhist shrine, there was a divine beast of 9 odd beasts, overlooking all living beings like a god sitting in the darkness. "Who are you? How dare you look directly at the statue of the ancestor of our sect so rudely?" A monk in black came over and scolded Lin Sun. "Are you collecting the wish energy of the Grand Tao to wake it up?" Lin Sun pointed at the 9 odd beasts in the Buddhist shrine in the distance. The monk in black was stunned. His face suddenly changed and he said angrily, "How dare you? Come on, take this man down." Clatter! A group of monks in black rushed out. Lin Sun stood still, but countless bright sword chi whizzed out of his body like crisscrossing divine light, spreading out. Puff, puff, puff. Before the monks in black rushed to him, their heads were cut off by the sword chi. For a moment, the void was full of heads flying, and blood splashed out like countless springs. Who on earth are you? How dare you come to our hidden land realm to make trouble?" The monk in black who had scolded Lin Sun before shouted. His face was livid, and his eyes were about to pop out. "Aren't you looking for me?" Lin Sun looked indifferent. The monk in black suddenly understood, as if he was struck by lightning. But the next moment, his head was also cut off and he died violently on the spot. When Lin Sun walked out of the Ksitigarbha temple, all the descendants of Ksitigarbha died violently. The lotus throne of will, used to collect the wish energy of the Grand Tao, was taken away by Lin Sun. When Lin Sun left Green Cliff City, the strictly controlled city fell into great panic and chaos. He came as if he was in an uninhabited place, and left after he was done. The news spread out as soon as possible. But when a group of big shots from the local hidden land arrived at Green Cliff City, Lin Sun had long disappeared. They were so angry that they felt stuffy in their chest. They had nowhere to vent their anger, and were about to vomit blood. No one had expected that Lin Sun would dare to be so bold when he was being hunted down. He was completely unscrupulous. And in the following period of time, Lin Sun's figure appeared in different cities one after another. Wherever he appeared, the Ksitigarbha temple would be destroyed and the lotus throne of will would be taken away. From the beginning to the end, no one could stop him, and he swept through everything in his path. The news could not be hidden at all. Lin Sun's unstoppable killing was like a single spark setting the prairie ablaze. It caused the entire cloud flower domain to be in turmoil and caused a monstrous storm. Countless uproars, exclamations, and shocked voices rang out. The entire dark world was alarmed, and no one dared to believe it. When the news reached the million-star city, all the major forces from the starry sky gasped and were shocked. This was indeed incredible. Lin Sun was already the enemy of the whole world, and was wanted by the whole world, but he seemed not to be afraid at all. With his own strength, he set off a bloody storm that affected many cities in the hidden land realm. When the old monk Duzhao learned all this, he was so angry that he almost went berserk. Chapter 2197. This man deserves to be cut into pieces. Monk Duzhao was so angry that his whole body was trembling. He was in the 9th level of the Emperor realm, and had a strong mind. But now he felt so annoyed that he wanted to cough up blood. There were only 2 days left before the Magic Lotus Festival began. But now, not only did they fail to capture Lin Sun, the heir of Mount Fangsuan, but he alone set off a storm of blood and chaos in the Yunhua domain. This was a slap in the face to the hidden land realm. Cultivators from all forces gathered in the city of 10,000 stars. What would they think of the hidden land realm when they learned of this? Uncle Master, the headmaster and a group of higher-ups have been dispatched. Someone came to report. Monk Duzhao was stunned, and his expression was uncertain. Our sect has to dispatch so many important people just to capture and kill a little thing. How shameful! He let out a long sigh. In fact, it was just as old Monk Duzhao had predicted. When they found out about the great commotion Lin Sun had caused, the 6 great Dao courts, the 10 great battle clans, and the other primordial imperial clans could not help but gloat. The hidden land realm was known as one of the 3 dark giants. It was so powerful that all the worlds on the starry sky ancient path were afraid of it. But now, in the territory of the hidden land realm, they could not even do anything to a heir of Mount Fangsuan. Naturally, it was too shameful. A series of facts have proved that even if Lin Sun is the enemy of the whole world, the destructive power he controls alone is enough to give any ancient orthodoxy a headache. Someone sighed. This man is growing too fast. It has only been less than a year since the end of the trip to the forbidden ancient immortal realm, and he already has the power to overturn the heavens and kill emperors. How terrifying is that? Someone sighed. If this man doesn't die, he will become a great threat. Don't worry. On this starry sky ancient path, as long as Emperor Shi is here, Lin Sun is destined to not be able to jump around for too long. Alas, what worries me is that if this man proves his way and becomes an emperor, at that time, who in the whole world can do anything to him? While the dark world was shocked by Lin Sun's magnificent feat, the headmaster of the hidden land realm and a group of high-level figures came together and arrived at the Yunhua domain. The lineup was so powerful that it was as if the core power of the hidden land realm had been fully mobilized. Unfortunately, when they set out, Lin Sun had already left the Yunhua domain. This made everyone in the hidden land realm feel depressed. Lin Sun had stirred up a storm and caused them to be disgraced. Then, he disappeared without a trace. This was naturally maddening. No matter what, amidst this turbulent, chaotic, and clamorous atmosphere, the curtains to the Wonder Lotus Grand Meeting that the entire world paid attention to was drawn as scheduled. It was said that the highest elder of the hidden land realm, Monk Dumaing, who presided over the event, had a gloomy look on his face. From beginning to end, he did not smile at all. It was said that most of the ancient forces from different parts of the world were discussing how to capture Lin Sun, the successor of Mountain Heart and Mind. But in the end, they couldn't come up with a clear and effective solution. The reason was very simple. Lin Sun, who had the power of the Slayer, was no longer a pushover. Ordinary emperors couldn't deal with him at all. The most troublesome thing was that his whereabouts were erratic. He was good at hiding and disguising himself. Even if they chased after him, they couldn't find too many clues. It was said that in the Wonder Lotus Grand Meeting, the great forces from all over the world had a secret talk and finally speculated some secrets related to the immortal Supreme Road. All this had nothing to do with Lin Sun. After making a scene in the Yunhua domain, he left directly and rushed to the Dark Land along the established route according to the map in the guiding copper mirror. Half a month later, on the border of the western horizontal territory, there was a surging blood-red ocean called the Indefinite Blood Sea. Lin Sun stood on the top of a lonely mountain on the side of the sea. Looking at the boundless blood-red sea, he couldn't help frowning. The map hidden in the guiding copper mirror ended here. However, it was clear that this was not the hidden land. The Dark Land is called the primordial ancestral land of the Mist-Hidden House. Since ancient times, no one knows where it is hidden without a guide. Lin Sun was lost in thought. The Western Horizontal Territory was one of the 33 territories of the Dark World, controlled by the Bronze Sparrow Tower, one of the 3 Dark Giants. The indefinite sea of blood before them was called a place of death by the locals. Since the ancient times until now, so long as it was an expert that entered this sea, then practically all of them would be unable to return, and they would die without a doubt. According to rumor, there were extremely terrifying primeval ferocious souls lying dormant in the depths of the indefinite sea of blood. Supposedly, they were monsters formed from the resentment of fallen emperor realm figures, and after experiencing countless years of transformation, all of these primeval ferocious souls had become terrifying to the extreme. Of course, this was just a rumor, but it could also be seen that the indefinite blood sea must be a place of great danger. At this time, the only thing Lin Sun was uncertain about was whether the dark land of the mist-hidden house was hidden in the indefinite blood sea. The sea was turbulent, with layers of blood-red waves. The sky was dyed like blood, which looked strange and creepy. The piercingly cold sea breeze blew over, and it was mixed with strands of fiendish qi. Lin Sun suddenly noticed that there was a boat on the sea, braving the wind and waves. On the boat stood a man with disheveled hair with a flagon hanging on his waist. His eyes were blurred, his nose was red, and he was holding a wooden sword in his arms. He stood there lazily, squinting his eyes as if he was asleep. Lin Sun's pupils shrank. The man, who looked like a drunkard, came on a boat on the sea. He didn't seem to be intimidating at all, but he gave Lin Sun a deadly sense of danger. Just looking at him, Lin Sun got goosebumps all over his body and felt a chill in his heart. There was no doubt that this must be a horrible existence. But before Lin Sun could react, a big yellow dog suddenly rushed out from the side of the man. It stood on its legs, held its head high, and looked at Lin Sun with a pair of bell-like eyes with incomparable pride. Ow! The big yellow dog didn't bark like a dog, but more like a wolf howl. Lin Sun was stunned. It was just a dog, but he felt that it was so proud, conceited, and insufferably arrogant, with a posture of, "I'm the only dog in the world." "Boy, what are you doing? Come here quickly." The big yellow dog made a sound, with impatience written on its face. Lin Sun looked at the man who looked like a drunkard, but he saw that the man held a wine gourd and gulped it down. After a loud belch, he said with a smile, "Is it strange?" Lin Sun nodded. This scene was indeed too strange and abnormal. On the dangerous and unpredictable blood sea, a man and a dog appeared on a boat. It was hard not to find it strange. The drunkard said, "You come here to go to the hidden land, right?" Lin Sun was shocked and said, "You are from the mist-hidden house?" "Kind of." The drunkard hung the wine gourd on his waist again, raised his hand to wipe the wine stains on his lips and said, "Come on, we have been waiting for you for a long time." Lin Sun frowned and hesitated. Whoosh! Suddenly, the big yellow dog appeared in front of him and said with a faint look in his eyes, "Boy, do you know that I almost killed my way into the hidden land realm for you? Of course, you are still too young to understand this, and you don't need to understand it. As long as you understand it, you can come here safely all the way. It stretched out a dog paw, pointed to itself, and said word by word, "You have made great contributions." There was incomparable conceit in its voice, which was a posture of looking down on Lin Sun. The corner of Lin Sun's mouth twitched. This dog was too arrogant. Whether it was its actions, words, or even its breath, it could be described as insufferably arrogant and domineering, which made people want to kill it and eat it. "Let's go." Before Lin Sun could respond, the big yellow dog stretched out its paw, grabbed Lin Sun, and rushed to the boat. Lin Sun was in a cold sweat. He had no time to react or resist a dog's sneak attack. For a moment, he looked at the big yellow dog in a different way. The drunkard laughed. "Boy, in the dark world, all the emperors have a secret understanding. Do you know what it is?" As he spoke, he didn't move, but the boat under his feet swept toward the depths of the unstable blood sea, as fast as lightning. Lin Sun had calmed down a little at this moment. He had noticed that although the man and the dog were unfathomably powerful, they seemed to have no malice towards him. "What?" Lin Sun asked casually. The drunkard smiled and said, I'd rather offend the king of hell than offend Big Yellow. Big Yellow? Lin Sun looked at the dog squatting on the bow of the boat with its head held up proudly. He was suspicious. Could this dog really make the emperors of the dark world so afraid of it? I hate your suspicious eyes the most in my life. The big yellow dog turned his head and glared at Lin Sun. If you're not, forget it, I don't want to argue with a little boy like you. If it were other emperors, I would have killed them many times for such suspicious eyes. Lin Sun's lips twitched. He had never seen such an arrogant big yellow dog. No, it was so arrogant that it didn't even put emperors in its eyes. Lin Sun decided to ignore this annoying big yellow dog. He looked at the drunkard beside him and asked with his fists cupped, May I ask who you are, senior? I don't dare to call you senior. The drunkard waved his hand. You can call me, well, drunkard. Drunkard? Lin Sun became more and more suspicious. Such a man, who made him feel extremely dangerous at first sight and couldn't see through him, was not as simple as a drunkard. What about it? Lin Sun couldn't help looking at the big yellow dog. Such an insufferably arrogant dog shouldn't have a very old-fashioned name. The big yellow dog raised its head high and was about to speak, but the drunkard said first, Big Yellow,